So tell me about your studies.
About what?
Your studies.
So I'm in biological systems engineering, which
Okay.
is it's a weird cross between like coding, agricultural, mechanical, and like chemical,
Okay.
but not too deep on any one of them. So right now the classes that I'm in are actually starting to get.
That's okay.
So
Time can be here for but if you want to. I'll move.
That's what I'm sticking by. That's cute. Just a microphone.
Hey Taylor. So, just so you know, this is live at all times.
Can I be here?
No, you can. We just have it because there's extra people for a city council meeting. Once the city council meeting happens, you can either go sit where somebody else is sitting who has a push to talk, because then these will be turned off.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's how that would work. When you just talk into it, you can just talk into it like it is live. Yes. So.
Love that. Thank you.
Yes, exactly. Do that. Would be perfect.
Okay, can you finish watching this?
Meeting called to order at 6 p.m. on October 23rd.
I call the Ames City Council meeting to order.
Now we're going to move to Pledge of Allegiance led by Madam Speaker. Moving on to adopting tonight's agenda. Are there any changes or additions to tonight's agenda? There's been a motion to approve tonight's agenda, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the agenda has been adopted. That's been loud. Moving on, we directly will move into the discussion under diversity and inclusion. Do you want to chime in and start?
Well, that's a segue, so. Well, good evening. It's just a pleasure to be here before we get into the agenda and just say, again, how much we value the connection with student government, and had the pleasure with meeting with your president, vice president already, certainly meeting with Dr. Stewart, other entities here on campus to try and really further cement the town and gown, the student and the relationship. And I think that a lot of the issues that exist on campus also exist in the city at large as well too. And so looking forward to our conversation this evening. And I know a lot of it is kind of asking us questions, but we would love to actually hear what's going on campus and how we as a city can help support student government and help the university as well too, because with a successful university, the city succeeds and vice versa. So we are intertwined, although I can say with experience from a long time ago when I was a student, it's very easy to kind of become insulated, from the city. But we really want to see more and more people engaged in the community. So with that said, the first item on the agenda is inclusive crosswalk, and it's something that I know I personally am extremely proud of the council and the action we've taken, and it's not been without a lot of controversy. And you probably have read or followed through with some of that, but I've asked Councilman Nelson to kind of talk about it, because I joke with him, he's kind of our media star for some reason. He's gotten quoted in CNN and ABC, and he was actually on IPR, and I think it's probably because of his staunch support and some of his comments that he made that he kind of got the notoriety, but he's done a great job representing council. So Councilman Nelson, would you just kind of give a little snapshot, maybe a little bit of a genesis of this, and then also we're overwhelmed. He's going to share. We've gotten over 55 postcards from around the country in support of the undertaking. So Chris?
Yeah, you know your day is going to take a different turn than you thought when you get an email from an editor at CNN saying, do you have time for a phone call this afternoon? We can't take the credit for this. This came about as a collaboration between the city and the university. Dr. Stewart's office originally mentioned it to the mayor, and then council kind of wrapped our arms around the inclusive crosswalk. And it's been really interesting. The mayor brought up that we've received a number of postcards. Usually we get 1 or 2 things a month, and this is half of what we've received in the last 2 weeks from all over the country. These are from Rochester, New York, and Arizona, and Winchester, New York, Montana. They're from all over. So it's been really rewarding for us to have received the support that we have, both locally and nationwide. We really haven't gotten too many things not supporting the sidewalks, which has been great to see. I thought maybe we'd have a little bit more on our hands as some of the controversies came into play. One of the more interesting emails we got early on in the process was someone who actually emailed council and said, I disagree with what you did, but now that the federal government said you can't do it, you absolutely need to fight that. But it's something that we're proud of. It's something that we would like to do, to replicate. When we initially approved this, we thought maybe something closer to campus would also be appropriate. The unfortunate thing is next year we're tearing up Welch for a year, so we thought maybe that wasn't the best timing to do something out in campus town. But stay tuned. In a year, you might see something else like that happen here.
Other council members want to add anything to that? I will say that one of the things that council did talk about, and it's been kind of an ongoing conversation, that is, there was a sense that why did you just pick, LGBTQIA, plus, and just showcase that? And the point is, it's a start. It's what other communities can we help support in different ways. And so I just can't say enough positive things about Dr. Stewart and his whole office. He's becoming a very close friend, and we meet very frequently to discuss lots of topics. And maybe we'll talk about this, on initiatives here in a second. But it's something that we want people from all walks of life, all orientations to feel welcome in our community. And this is just a small way that we could communicate that, they're welcome. And it was certainly time for Pride Fest. It was certainly taken to be kind of in the cultural intersection, there by the library as well too. And just someone did ask me, what's the future of that? Because we had to paint it. We went out and we had some budget, $20,000, $25,000 to get permanent vinyl put down, and the bid came back because of a short time frame, like $60-some thousand, and we just couldn't justify that, so we decided to paint it. But staff's going out to get bids this winter to go back and put vinyl to try and make it more permanent, because the paint will wear off, within a year probably. So I'll just mention a few things on initiatives. One thing that we're talking about. Well, first of all, are you all aware that we have this symposium on diversity and inclusivity next Tuesday, 7:30? It's sponsored by the Chamber. I see a lot of blank stares. 7:30 a.m., that's right. For those of us that can get up at that time. I think this is our second one.
Second.
And it's grown out of it's a long story, which I won't go into, but in essence, it's co-sponsored by the Chamber, by Iowa State University, the city of Ames, and last year we had almost 200 people come, and Dr. Stewart's office did an outstanding job. All of his staff helped put on workshops and helped us become more aware of the issues and what needs to be done from a standpoint of business and community. and it was so well attended, and it was just people were saying, we want this to continue. The next generation is next Tuesday morning. It goes from 7:30 until 1 o'clock. And if anyone wants more information, why don't you let me know or let Madam Speaker know, and we'll try and get information out to you by email. I know Dr. Stewart's office is also involved with the planning of that. Initiatives, one thing is that, and then this is the city manager and I think Dr. Stewart were involved with this, and that is we actually have a Ames Citizens Academy that actually tomorrow night's graduation, where we have people from all different walks of life, different ethnicities, races come, and we help them understand more about the community, so we're trying to reach out from that standpoint. Another issue, another initiative we're looking at is trying to start some progressive dinners where we actually can have people from different walks of life actually have a meal in people's homes. And it's still in the planning stages right now, so I really can't say this is when it's going to happen. But it's something that this has also been discussed with Dr. Winterstein and Pam Elliott Kane as well too. And so we are starting to look at, we don't want to just give lip service to this whole issue of diversity and inclusivity. We really want to make some significant inroads, but it's hard work. It takes a lot of time. It takes initiative from people in the community. So as that continues to develop, I'm sure that Dr. Stewart will help promote that on campus as well too. But I think that'd be open to, I think the council will be open to hearing what thoughts you have as students. What else can we do to make students and from all walks of life feel welcome in the community?
John, before we go to the questions, one other initiative that we've undertaken the last couple of years is participation in the Municipal Equality Index.
Yep.
And the latest round will be announced within the next month. They've asked us to not talk too much about it until that happens, but it's kind of a framework and a checklist of things for us to look at how we're doing in the city with our hiring process, with our systems, with services that we offer in the community, and just kind of put together a cohesive way to look at some of these things. So we've been making headway on that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put one of our senators on the spot, so I apologize in advance. But Senator Searles, would you want to talk kind of about the project you're working on? It's super cool, and he's made a ton of progress on it, so I yield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm assuming you're referencing the Land Acknowledgement Project. Okay. Hi, I'm Ian Searles. So one of the projects I'm working on with the United Native American Student Association on campus and the library, and actually Dr. Stewart's office as well, is getting a permanent acknowledgement within the library, the Parks Library here, acknowledging that the land we're on is initially and is Indigenous land, talking about the history of the Native Americans in the area, basically the way that Native Americans were removed, the fact that we're called Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa, but the Iowa tribe was pushed out of the state of Iowa, so just kind of all the implications and the wrongdoings against the community, but then also talking about the current state, how just about an hour away is Meskwaki settlement, and a lot of people seem to think that Native Americans are in the past, and they're still here, they're still part of our society, or rather, we're still existing on their land. So that's the idea, is getting just a permanent acknowledgement there. I think doing that within the city would also be awesome. That'd be really cool, and just kind of a permanent start, like you said, kind of like the crosswalk, to further bridging that divide.
Okay, there we go. So one of the things that was the intention of this discussion in part was also to delve into students' thoughts on bringing an inclusive crosswalk to campus. So if there's anybody who has issues with it, or if somebody wants to say why they think it would be important to bring to campus to bring something, I think it'd be worthwhile to the council to sort of hear the student perspective on why they think that's important, and to say whether or not you have concerns. I know there are some people who have talked in the past who had concerns about the cost of it, but if it's also coupled with a Welch Avenue reconstruction, when that happens about a year from now, I know that those concerns will be somewhat mitigated, I suppose. But if anybody else wants to speak on that, I think it'd be worthwhile. Oh, can I yield time? Or I don't know how that works here, but yeah, I'd yield some time to the Director of Diversity and Inclusion.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Okay, sorry. My name is Elena Hoffman. I'm the Director of Diversity and Inclusion with Student Government. So recently, my committee just met yesterday, and we actually brought up this topic, and it was really received greatly and in very, very positive. We have members on the committee that are members of the LGBTQIA+ community, and it was just seen, we talked about how the Ames city has really been a proponent for a lot of issues that are pertinent to them and to their community, and that show of faith and that show of support, I think, really, really is impactful. So I just want to say, first off, thank you for that. I think that was, is very, very impactful to people in the notion that not only are they accepted here at Iowa State, but they're here accepted within the larger area, and that just really, really meant a lot. But something we definitely talked about was that possibility of it moving forward onto ISU, and that was, again, just received really well, and I just think that'd be something that we could definitely work alongside different communities within the center here on campus, which is the LGBTQIA+ Center, specifically for those students, and I just think, kind of doing those types of partnerships, but my committee was very pro and very for it, and so I think, you'd have a lot of support from us, so I just wanted to say that. We like it. Good job.
We also were the first community in Iowa to do this, and Dr. Stewart took great joy in the fact that Iowa City was calling saying, what is this? So we beat the Hawkeyes at this. But one more thing I just mentioned is that you've all adopted, or the university adopted, the principles of community, and there's 6 principles that are being displayed, on posters. And council is going to be taking that up. I think I speak without any hesitation that council agrees 100% with the 6 principles. It's just that the text below those is really written right now as being specific to campus. We want to really adjust that and to be more encompassing for the entire community. And so that's also been a discussion with Dr. Stewart. So we're probably going to see those being looked at. I know that Councilwoman Betcher has been working on that with some students, and also our Susan Guiazda, our public relations director, did some work on that as well too. And so part of the goal is going to be probably doing some co-branding and also putting ours next to yours to show that it really is universal both on campus and off campus, because we want it. And I think consistency will be very helpful as well too, and diversity is certainly one of, and equity is part of that. And anyone seen the coasters yet at any of the restaurants? Dr. Stewart has got coasters printed, and he's going to start distributing to restaurants. So when you get a drink, of course you can't, when you get your Coke or your soft drink, but anyway, the whole goal is to try and leverage the football, the increase in attendance, and also people are coming, out of city to be exposed to that as well too.
All right, I'll keep this quick because I know we're running a little over time. I'm a member of the Student Initiatives Committee, and we just met with Brad Freyhofer, the director of the center, and they mentioned that the center and the LGBTQIA+ community looks at student government and our decisions very closely. They mentioned specifically the example of the BYU resolution a couple of years ago, I believe it was, where we had a resolution expressing some concerns about BYU entering the Big 12, and Brad mentioned that members of the LGBTQIA+ community looked at our stance on that and took heart in the fact that there were representatives in student government who were not afraid to represent them, to represent their concerns as well. So I think while I recognize that senators might have concerns about the logistics of the crosswalk, I think it is important that we express our strong support for the idea, the sentiment, and continue to do that moving forward, because the community is looking at us and is looking at what we do here. So I would certainly be the first to express my very strong support for it. I'll yield.
I'll keep this short. I was able to go to the International Town and Gown Association meeting this summer with Councilmember Beatty Hansen and Dr. Stewart and Sarah Lawrence and Joel Hochstein from Iowa State's staff, and we also had Tashik Care from our city manager's office. But what came out of that is going to be a series of recommendations that will be presented to the mayor and to the president and her leadership team. I believe Dr. Harmon's over there. And I can't tell you exactly what those recommendations are, but it's going to be related to things like diversity and inclusion and some additional projects that might work well with the Indigenous people's acknowledgement with the library and other things that we think could be done around the community in partnership between the city and Iowa State and also with the Chamber of Commerce. Dan Culhane, the president of the Chamber, is also committed to working with the university and the city on these efforts. So it's a good time to be here.
Thank you all. Moving on to our next topic on the agenda, micromobility. I know that's the topic that everyone loves talking about in terms of moving on into discussion of scooters. If you all want to give a background, Marihela was in terms of whether the city, how the city was approached by different companies in terms of what that conversation looks like in the council, and then our senators can jump in and talk about their what they've heard from students and their own opinions as well.
Well, I know that Councilwoman Beatty Hansen is not very excited about scooters. So I'm going to defer to her and ask her to share some thoughts on that, what we're working on, because she, honestly, all kidding aside, she's passionate about it. And it's funny is that we go on some of these, city visits and stuff. She's looking around for scooters, and she's getting on the scooters. You know where she's going to be. So go ahead.
Exactly. So, yeah, to display my hand right away, I am really interested in thinking about how we might bring scooters to Ames. But they come with a lot of controversy, too, or you want to be careful in how you think about them because, there's some safety concerns, too. But so I would start off by saying that the early models of scooters coming to communities would be these companies. They'd come and they'd drop the scooters off without sort of talking with the city about it, And then cities are left to scramble to figure out what to do with scooters that might be blocking sidewalks or getting, ditched and things like that. So I think now the model for these companies is to work with cities beforehand, which is good, right? They've learned their lesson in that regard. So I think it's a good time to start thinking about how we might want to regulate these modes of transportation. Because you have rental scooter companies, but then also you have private vehicles that are very similar. So private electric scooters that people might just purchase to ride around on, or electric bikes are becoming a lot more common too, electric assist bikes. So we still have to figure out a way to deal with those within the city, even if we weren't to ultimately get a rental scooter company. And so a while back, one of the companies that approached Iowa State to gauge their interest, and I think at that time Iowa State was not interested, but times passed since then, and again, I'm very interested. So I asked if we could form a committee to look at how we might regulate scooters and include Iowa State, because it's very important if we were to consider scooters in the community that Iowa State has some say in how that's going to work or look, because you can imagine, I think that a lot of students might be interested in using them, and if Iowa State, they would need to be on board somehow, because we're going to have to know where to park scooters near campus and how to deal with them on campus. Campus has a lot of regulated sidewalks too, right? You can't ride your bike just anywhere on campus. There's only designated routes where you're allowed to do that, and so they already have some controls about bicycles themselves. So again, when it comes to scooters, I'm sure that they'd want to say. So we have started that committee. I'm not on. We have city staff on that, and we have Iowa State representatives on that committee. And we'd be looking at things like regulating where you could park one, maybe what hours of the day they would operate. You wouldn't want them to operate through the night, for example, and things like that. So that's kind of where we are now, is just looking at it. We haven't committed to anything, and I think not everyone is as equally enthusiastic as I am, right? So I would like to hear everyone's input as well on, again, obviously that if folks have safety concerns with those, hearing about those, but also if you think they would be something students would use, or that students would be interested in and having in Ames, I'd like to hear that too, or council would like to hear your input on that as well. So I'll yield to questions or.
I'm from Cedar Rapids, and so we actually recently did have the integration of it was actually the assisted bikes that you mentioned. And one thing that we noticed in particular in Cedar Rapids is that where the bikes were used were essentially only places with sidewalks that had been recently redone to be wider. And so I understand on Welch right now, they're adding a bike lane. There are certain sidewalks on campuses that have recently been redone. But when you're thinking about this, I would just say, understand that the infrastructure challenge, and it comes even more with scooters than with bikes, because scooters would have to be used on sidewalks, probably, I mean, maybe not, I'm not sure. But I think just understand that the infrastructure challenge for making it accessible throughout the city is a larger problem than I think Cedar Rapids at least expected. I'll yield.
Vice Speaker Schrader.
Yeah, I just say thanks for looking into it for scooters. I'm a pretty big fan of them. We were down in Stillwater for the Big 12 conference with Oklahoma State, and they had scooters on campus that had regulations like you thought. They were geo-fenced out of certain areas. They couldn't be ridden after a certain time of night. So I know our chief of staff he rode one to a restaurant, and then he had to walk back because he didn't realize that. But thanks for taking the time to look at it and to do it well. I think that there's a lot of fears of what could go wrong. So as long as we take the time, I would be really excited to have scooters on campus. It just takes a while to get from one side of the campus to the other. I know from my dorm over to the Citywide building where I had meetings at sometimes, it would be a 20, 25-minute walk. And sometimes that just eats into too much of your time. So scooters, it's such a big campus that having scooters would be helpful, as well with accessibility. With sometimes the bus routes don't run on weekends, and students can't get to places they need to go, and scooters would be an imperfect backup option for just at least some mobility, probably less than a mile or so, but it would at least give students some mobility when the buses aren't running, and I think that it would be a really big benefit to campus, so thank you for
It's surprising that scooters is one of the topics that students will come up and talk to you about the most out of anything. And I know that I've had several friends who have talked to me about the idea of having scooters on campus, a lot of them who have come from areas where there's been efforts to have bikes or scooters as part of their public transportation. I know on campus that there is a good deal of students who have their own scooters, skateboards, motorized boost boards, what have you. So those students may be a little bit less interested in that, but for the students who may not want to purchase their own motorized electric longboard, which would cost somewhere around $1,600, they would be very interested in looking into this sort of service. One concern, obviously, is the change of seasons. As you know, we have very cold winters here. So it'd be interesting to see how kind of the revenue streams would have to be adjusted based on winter and then also road conditions as the year goes along as well.
Excuse me. So one of the committees I sit on with student government is the sustainability committee, and within that we have a subcommittee that we've deemed city and university relations, and we just started talking about some projects recently, and one of them is actually scooters. So from our committee, we have interest in this. The committee consists of 2 senators, which is me and Senator Alucard, who's absent tonight. So we are interested in this. We've had multiple people also express interest to this. As we've already talked about, Senator Han Young, the seasoning, the wintering over, maintenance, stuff like that. We did talk a little bit about partnerships with outdoor rec. That would be university specific. When we talked about university scooters, we mentioned how students could swipe a student ID, and that's how we could hold people accountable for damages and stuff like that. Getting out into the community, that's a little different, but I think that working together on this, there's a lot of interest, at least from what I'm seeing. Maybe I'm seeing a very funneled vision, I don't know. But I'm in support of it. I think it's awesome. I live in Freddie Court, so just north of campus. Having a scooter would be awesome to just zip to campus to my already short walk to be even shorter. But I'm in support of this. I think it's great. I yield.
So the scooter issue has actually come up in student government multiple times. At the end of last year, there was a resolution, I believe it was during the last meeting of the year, there was a resolution essentially requesting TAC, which is the Transportation Advisory Council, to investigate the possibility of getting scooters. The resolution actually failed, but that was last year's Senate, of course, and hearing the voices in the room right now, perhaps it would be a good idea to have another resolution to gauge current interest. But one of the concerns that senators had in the past, Senator Whiteshaw in particular had a concern that people would be leaving the scooters on the sidewalks, in front of doorways. It could potentially be an issue for people with disabilities, restricting their mobility, ironically enough. So I would say that there are concerns, but it does sound like the majority of people are in favor of it and see ways to mitigate those difficulties, perhaps.
Senator Blair.
So I like the idea of scooters or electric bikes in general. And this kind of goes to the campus-community relationship too, is that there's obviously like a line that separates where Ames used to be and where campus is, and it's kind of impenetrable. Like there's Lincoln, there's like 6th, and Lincoln is really not a good place to ride a bike. So are there anything that we're working on to make Lincoln Way more accessible for bikes or scooters or electric cars, electric bikes, so.
Good question. I would say the answer to that is 6th Street. So Lincoln Way, I think in the near future, it wouldn't have any sort of makeover that would make it have bike lanes or anything like that. We just don't have the room, as far as I understand, on Lincoln Way. So I bike a lot. I would encourage people to use 6th Street or 13th as those routes on bikes, or if, hypothetically, hopefully, on scooters, because there are some nice. You have the bike lanes on the road on 6th, and there's also a nice shared use path. So for people maybe who aren't comfortable riding on the road, you can still ride on the shared use path or walk that way. So that route's really good. Same with 13th. There's no lanes on the road, but there's a nice shared use path up 13th. There's a hill, so that's a downside. But no, I mean, I think Lincoln Way, it'll take a number of years probably to make improvements to Lincoln Way that would make it super bike friendly, I would say, unfortunately.
So that brings up what we do with transportation planning in general. We have a long-range transportation plan. It looks out a number of years. We're in the process of starting to redo that plan that puts together the network of the infrastructure improvements that we look at doing. And to speak to this specific topic, we use a number of different tools depending on what infrastructure is in place, what infrastructure is nearby. So we have some roads with sharrows, we have some with on-road bike treatments, we have some with the shared use paths to the side of the road. So we use a number of different tools depending on that particular area of town or what treatments they are. And we do have gaps in this, and that's what that transportation plan is looking to address so that we can fill in those gaps. We spend $1.2 million a year, I think, on just multimodal transportation improvements, and that's actually as much money or a little bit more than even Des Moines spent a couple of years ago on their improvements. But it just takes time to fill in some of these gaps. So we're making progress. That network is getting built out, but it is interesting now that we are going through the long-range transportation, or beginning the long-range transportation plan update process, to think about that within the context of potential micromobility or scooter infrastructure. So that's timely.
Okay, so I have a lot of friends that go to UW Milwaukee, and I know it's a lot bigger than Ames is, but they said that they have their scooter system, they have hotspots, if that makes sense, so you can only ride your scooter from one hotspot to another hotspot. So yes, it takes down, it kind of sucks that you can't go from destination to destination, but it's nice to still have that couple of minutes cut from like your walk to class. It probably is a lot bigger system than we're like expecting to afford, but if you want to look into it, I don't know exact name, but there's programs out there that do that. I yield.
Okay, sweet. So my big concern with it is just the accessibility stuff. If somebody leaves it in a roadway or a sidewalk, and that makes it so somebody who is has a wheelchair to move, they will no longer be able to take that path. Is there ways that the city can regulate to make it so it would only be able to be left in certain spots or anything like that, so to avoid those harms?
Yeah, in a way. How it would work is, how it usually works. I mean, there's probably many different models, but typically like a city might offer one or maybe two, a limited number of companies to come in under a pilot program, hypothetically. And those companies are gonna have to meet the requirements of that pilot program to stay. And so those companies have ways of fining people for parking bikes improperly. So it comes down to how the company regulates the user. And so it would be heavy fines, right? So if someone left a scooter and it on a sidewalk blocking access, that user might get fined if they're not putting it back in the place it's supposed to go. And sometimes you have to take a picture of where you park it, to prove to the company that you parked it in the right place. So I think there's the risk that it would, you might have one or two scooters that are left in the wrong places, but I think as soon as those fines start to get imposed, word would travel pretty quickly that, you're gonna get, I don't know what they would do, $50, $100 fine for improperly parking. And so then I think the news travels fast and it's sort of self-regulating. And so that's how we would do it, is that if we did let a company in to do a pilot, if they weren't holding users accountable, and if we were finding scooters in Lake Laverne or in the, in the rivers running through Ames or on sidewalks or, in places they shouldn't be, then we would end the pilot, right? That the pilot program would be over. And so that's the mechanism the city has for regulating.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
I just want to just maybe bring this to the close so we can move on. You got some other good topics. I just can't say enough about the relationship between the city and the university. And as we can all imagine, there has to be really good, clear communication on this topic. We certainly don't want to have scooters all of a sudden brought into the city, and Iowa State says no, and all of a sudden you just have a train wreck of scooters, all along Lincoln Way, people just dropping scooters. And so I think this is just a testament to the fact that I don't know what it was like 20, 30 years ago, but there's a high commitment level on the council, there's a high commitment level, at staff, and also at the university to work together and communicate. And certainly there is between law enforcement as well too. So this is something we got to work together and figure out. And we just came back from Fort Collins. We did a Pier City visit, and they were just having scooters delivered this week. And I think that going to Pier Cities as well too. You mentioned, I think it was Stillwater, is that right? Just going to is talking to those people and getting feedback. What's working well? What's not working well? Cedar Rapids is also mentioned as other things. So it's just one of those, we want to get it right so we don't have basically a giant mess on our hands. But it's going to take a really good communication and commitment on both parts to make it work. Because if Iowa State doesn't want it on campus, we got to really think about how that's going to work.
Moving on, does anyone have any closing announcements before we switch to the next topic of citywide internet utilities? All right, seeing none, moving on to the citywide internet utility. I know there was a discussion brought up in terms of city providing an option for internet use. Mary Helen, you want to give like a brief?
Actually, I'd like to turn this over to Councilman Martin. This is his area, this is his sweet spot, his passion also, and so I asked him if he would mind offering a few comments and a quick synopsis on where we're at and maybe where we're headed.
Great, I'd be happy to. So this is an interesting topic, and it is something that I've followed pretty closely. I want to give you some background on this. First of all, Iowa State has had internet services since the mid-'80s, right? And so Iowa State has kind of its own history and infrastructure for on-campus purposes. What we've been investigating is the extent to which internet access is really accessible, affordable, and available off campus. And of course, there's a huge amount of overlap between what happens on campus and off, because many students live off campus, and faculty and staff live off campus as well. And then there are all the businesses in Ames off campus. So it's been at least a couple years now that council has been sort of tracking the issues with providing quality service in Ames, and has been undertaking a series of agenda items and workshops in order to try to see what we can do to improve service, both in affordability, better customer service, and in making sure that every address in the area really gets some good service. So the outcomes, I want to just draw your attention to two things that have been going on here. One is sort of an independent interest from a new internet provider company called Metronet, and they're planning now to offer service within Ames, hopefully within about a year, maybe between 1 and 2 years. So a new service provider in Ames that will change the competitive landscape and hopefully improve things. At the same time, council has recently decided to commission a study as to whether the city should play a role, and if so, what role, in extending internet service to the Ames community. And there are a lot of different ways we can do this. I'd say one of the big decision points is whether the city could, for instance, put fiber throughout the town and then have other companies come in and use that fiber to provide internet service to customers. It's one model. Another model is for the city to both have the fiber and be the utility itself that actually administers the users and their use of the service. So what we've recently decided to do is to kind of investigate both of those things and see whether we really have enough information to commission an expensive study to see whether to pursue one of those, or whether we should instead concentrate on looking at what the competitors will provide and whether we should just play a role in filling in some gaps to make sure that everyone has services. So that's what council has decided to do, and we hope to have some results from this in about a year from now. That's about the same schedule as this new provider will be providing service. So I guess at this point we just have to sort of look at this and pay attention, and we will have more decisions to make on it going forward, but that's sort of where we stand right now.
Anyone want to have views on the topic, center of conflict?
Hi. You mentioned Metronet, which would be introducing fiber optic cable, which is superior for Wi-Fi and all that stuff, so good job. But I know you mentioned this fairly early in looking into this, but is there any sort of comparison as to how it would be priced as compared to Mediacom? Well, that's really the only one here, at least for me, but because right now I'm shelling out $100 a month for Mediacom and we still don't have unlimited data. They've implemented data caps. So what can you say as to potential data caps and the possibility of it being competitive with those prices?
What I can say about this is just from my memory, and this is, all I can do is repeat what Metronet has said, but my recollection is that they're planning to offer service at 100 megabits per second, same speed in both directions, for $50 a month plus about $10 access fee is my understanding, with no data caps. And that would be their lowest level of service, and then they would have higher levels of service as well. That's what they have said. I understand that's what they have offered in other markets as well, so it seems plausible to me.
Okay, thank you. That's currently half of what I pay for the same stuff with the data cap, so I yield.
I could just clarify too, is that the city does not regulate, tonight we could incorporate as a ISU, City of Ames internet company, and we could start offering internet. Okay, we could have a lot of money and had a lot of equipment. But the point being is that this Metronet coming in was on their own volition. It's a private business enterprise, coming in. We have no say in what they charge, what they offer, their equipment, their service. It's the same with Mediacom. It's the same with CenturyLink. And so that's kind of the predicament that we're, in, is that we can't, the only thing we get involved with is if there's any kind of incentives given to try and fill in some gaps. But the point is that it's really, we've been getting this encouragement to look at doing a study. And so the study, I think, is going to be helpful to try and give an idea of what would the cost be, because some communities have done community internet, but it's been quite a while, ago. But we're also, our hands are tied, and it's also, we have to cash flow it as well, too. And we don't want taxpayers, footing the bill, so.
Senator Blair.
I would just, I support like the idea of a municipal utility internet. I think it's really nice that we have a municipally owned power plant. I think that's a really valuable thing for Ames. We can control it locally. We can make sure that everyone has access. Not what, like 85% is the new one coming in? 85% of homes or something like that?
They've said the number 80%.
Oh, 80, okay. And then we could like make sure we ensure net neutrality, just local control. We maybe wouldn't have to run it as high of a profit because it's a municipally owned thing. So I would encourage the city council to look towards a municipal utility. So I yield.
Senator Zastro.
So I represent the Inter-Residence Hall Association, which is just people living in the dorms at Iowa State. And right now there's a bill actually going through that body discussing whether or not cable for the dorms should be continued or if it should be continued in part. And during this discussion, the issue of internet came up as well. And so Pete Englund talked a little bit, not a ton about this, but what he said is essentially in the next 2, 5, 10 years, the dorms of Iowa State might be getting a new system of internet to make sure that the Ethernet ports work, to make sure that speeds are higher. And so if there was another competitor aside from Mediacom in this market, I think the cost for students would certainly go down. So I would just like to bring up the point that while I certainly appreciate that it'll happen off campus, costs on campus will be lower too. And I think that's something that should really be appreciated. So I think that it's a great idea that we're looking into this. I yield.
Sure. So I guess my questions are, I really love the idea of municipal internet utilities. And I know that there are lots of cities around the country who have done it, but I don't know of any examples in Iowa that have currently done it. And my understanding, at least, has been because there are somewhat prohibitive state regulations about having to have a referendum to get municipalities to do it and that sort of thing. So I was just wondering if the council's considered any of those yet, or if there's things that we've thought about there, or.
Sure. Take a stab at it. Yeah. One of the things that will come out of the feasibility study is probably looking at those as types of options. MetroNet is actually partnering with, I think, Davenport and Bettendorf, the Quad Cities, and looking at a public-private partnership there. So once that gets a little bit further down the road, once we do a feasibility study, something like that could be one of the options that we look at. It is restrictive. We would have to borrow money differently to build an internet utility than we would to fund roads and even the power plant. So there's the funding model is different enough that there's a little more risk, and by a little I mean a fair amount more risk to the city to expend that money to do it. So we, via the feasibility study, need to find out if it makes sense for us to even talk about it more.
Sure. Yeah.
As a student who lives off campus and currently has a property that is locked into one internet service provider, I believe that having more competition in this market is very good. It kind of allows for kind of like what Senator Khan was saying. It allows other internet service providers to either lower their prices to stay competitive or increase their speeds. For students who are more or less locked into having a utility as part of their monthly rent, they can suffer from outages of internet or other things that are just included and not paid as a monthly utility, as those internet service providers can't really be changed by the students. So having more choices for that population is always a good thing. I would definitely be in support of fiber. I did have one question about the Ames provided option, if that would be a utility within the city. and that was how would that how would that fit into the competition of that, and how would we ensure that the utility was continually being improved so that all members could experience better speeds and less cost?
That would be part of the planning effort. I think that the city has a very good track record of thinking in the long term when it sets up services, and so I just have confidence that that would be handled well. As for the competitive pressure, I guess I'm not sure I understood your question there.
It was just to kind of make it clear, the if it were to be one option for citizens of Ames, would they be required to have this utility, or would they be able to choose from internet service providers and the City of Ames option?
I'm pretty confident that the most that the city would do is offer a service that could be used as an alternative to other service providers. There's no way we would get in the business of saying others can't. It's not even legal for us to do this as far as I know.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Okay, there we go. So I know that there were 5 values. I believe it was 5. I'm trying to count off the top of my head, but that the city was considering 6 values that the city was considering when looking at a city utility for the feasibility study. Could you expand on what those values are? And I think it would be good to, after that, invite any senators to say if there's something that's lacking. I think it's a pretty all-inclusive list, but I'd be curious to see if there's any value that somebody else doesn't think is covered under those 6.
I'd be happy to. This is something that we adopted as one of our city council goals in 2018, and that's why we've been able to sort of keep up the pressure to make sure that we don't lose track of this topic. The improvements that we identified were for residents and businesses related to availability of internet service, its reliability, its cost, speed, customer service, and policy issues, and by that I mean things like privacy practices and net neutrality. So those are the 6 items.
I guess the conversation is kind of pretty wrapped up. We'll move into open forum since we're cutting close on time. Mayor Heller has just a couple of points, and then if y'all have any questions, concerns from the city, y'all can raise during this time, and make sure to keep it brief since we are running short on time.
Yeah, I was going to ask a couple of council members, maybe Chris, if you could just talk just briefly about some of the sustainability things that we're undertaking, because that's really important. You know, we got the hybrid vehicles and the dump trucks. And then Amber, can you just touch briefly on our affordable housing, because that's something that maybe we think we're starting to move the needle a little bit. Last night we had an hour-and-a-half long conversation, but I know it's something that's important for students, and it's an issue that we've been working on. It's a very complex issue. There's not an easy solution, and it's going to cost a lot of money from contributions. And so to try and say that, oh, we got it figured out is a very long stretch. And the same thing goes for sustainability as well, too. Maybe just take 2 or 3 minutes, just touch on a few things, and then Amber, if you would, and then we can leave it open. And then I want to talk about boards and commissions before we close.
All right, well, very briefly, I'll just briefly mention some of the things that we've done. David mentioned our council goals. Sustainability is one of them. Several years ago, we converted our power plant from coal to natural gas. That conversion alone cut our greenhouse gas emissions by 40%. So that was a first step in a process as we look to reduce our carbon footprint in the city. We are currently undertaking, or we're getting proposals to do a greenhouse gas inventory citywide, and we're going to use that to target programs, initiatives to mitigate our footprint. And so we should be receiving that back in the spring and use that to develop a plan going forward. Several other things that we've done, on the Citywide, I'm on the Citywide board, have received a grant to purchase 2 electric buses. You'll see those on campus in about a year. They take a year to a year and a half to get once you order them. But we're undertaking a number of smaller projects as well. Mayor mentioned a biofuel program that we partnered with a local biodiesel company to retrofit 5 of our vehicles to use 100% biodiesel year-round, which is something that's generally not able to be done. It's a neat system that allows you to use biodiesel in cold weather, which is something that's not usually possible. And it's 5 dump trucks, 5 larger diesel vehicles that they use for dump trucks, snowplows, things like that. And so those 5 vehicles use 10% of the fuel that the city uses in a year, just in those 5 vehicles. And those will next year be converted to 100% biodiesel. So we're looking at a number of different ways to deal with things. We're looking at how our resource recovery plant works, which is where we generate refuse-derived fuel to power the power plant, or to be used in the power plant. There's a process change that they're looking at that could significantly reduce the amount of natural gas that we need to burn the same amount of trash. But several of our other initiatives is emphasizing reduction. The recycling market now is very challenging. There's not a market for a lot of recycling products since a lot of the countries in Asia have stopped taking that. Just the market has dropped out of that. So reduction is a way to deal with that. The rummage rampage, if you've been around, has been exponentially growing in allowing people to swap furniture, keep things out of the landfill. We have a pilot program relating to composting that, if it turns out to be successful, could potentially grow. So it's a priority. There's a lot of things that we're doing, but I would love to, I think council would love to hear other ideas that might be out there as well.
I might just mention, I think that if we could convert every vehicle to electric and be cost neutral, we'd do it in a heartbeat. Electric bus costs $400,000 more than a diesel bus. You go from $500,000 to $900,000. And we have, I think it's close to 100 buses. That's $40 million to convert to electric buses. We'd love to do it. And students pay about 40% of Cyride's budget. So if we would go ahead and just in 10 years' time go out and start buying those buses, you start doing the math, and instead of paying like $80 towards Citywide every semester, I think it's going to go up exponentially in order to do that. So we have to try and work in a way that is fiscally prudent. And I'll just mention, last spring we had a meeting here. Someone complained about snow removal. The reason that we're only doing 5 trucks, we'll make sure those trucks can get out there and plow the snow for you this summer, or we'll have you next spring saying, why aren't you plowing my snow? Amber, do you want to talk just briefly on the affordable housing and buyback program?
Sure, and a couple other things too. So as the mayor said, when we talk about affordable housing, it's a very difficult issue. It's not unique to Ames, it's not unique to Iowa, it's something that's happening all across the country. And there is not a magic wand that we can solve in order to create a solution that's going to fix everything. The other thing that's really important, which I think we do well with regards to affordable housing, is creating partnerships or leveraging those partnerships to move the needle in that area. So some of the things that we focus on as a city through our community development block grant funding, CDBG funding, and our home funds, that includes everything from first-time homebuyer assistance to actually purchasing properties that are dilapidated and then rehabilitating them to be used either for home buyers who fall into that low to moderate income category or to convert into low and moderate income rental properties. So we do a lot of that internally at the city. And then one of the other things that you're all familiar with is our participation with Asset through our partnership with all of you and United Way and the county. And so the city's portion of Asset is about $1.4 million. And while that doesn't all go to affordable housing initiatives, there are a number of agencies that operate in the world of affordable housing who receive some of those funds. Good Neighbor Assistance, Mainstream Living where I work, Youth and Shelter Services. There's many organizations that we have operating in Ames and in Story County that are working to address affordable housing needs. And then the other thing that the city participates in, again, leveraging partnerships, is our funding to the Story County Housing Trust Fund, which I chair. And so, again, we're providing funding, the county is providing funding, all of this, the cities in Story County are also providing funding, and then we're using that to leverage money from the state. And the trust fund has only been in existence for 3 years, and just in those 3 years, we've been able to provide hundreds of thousands of dollars to provide rental assistance to low-income families, and then also provide funding to owner-occupied properties to rehabilitate those homes, to make sure that we maintain that stock of affordable housing. So replacing roofs, abating mold, replacing heating and cooling system, those types of things. And that's been really helpful and really beneficial. So what we discussed last night is a new initiative to potentially, we've got a lot of details to work out, provide incentives to convert rental properties back to affordable owner-occupied properties. And that could be done through a variety of ways. So we may look at providing the owner of a rental property with funds to rehabilitate that, to make it safe and make it appealing to people who may want to buy that home and who may fall into that low and moderate income category. But also perhaps looking at some other income categories, because we have that important gap between people who don't necessarily meet that 80% of area median income, but they're also not in a position where they have disposable income to purchase a house offhand. And then also through that program, looking at providing first-time homebuyer assistance, whether that's through down payment or closing cost assistance, to convert those properties back to owner-occupied.
Very briefly, within the Sustainability Committee, City and University Relations Subcommittee, we started talking about student safety in the city. We'll continue these conversations at a later point. This is not exactly for now. But 3 areas of interest that were identified as student concerns within the city are 16th Street, I believe it is, by VetMed. There is a walking path that crosses the street. There's no pedestrian signage there, and it's a pretty high-speed area. People were talking about getting those, like, press the button and it flashes type of thing, just to say that there's pedestrians. Another point of interest was the Lincoln Way and Stanton crosswalk, which is right by Jeff's Pizza. At night, that crosswalk terrifies me. There is no lights for pedestrians crossing, and Lincoln Way is just scary to me. And then finally, University and Haber, I believe it is. It's the no ride on red, single lane bridge under the train tracks. Over the past 2 weeks alone, there have been 3 vehicles take a ride on red, despite the 2 signs there. So I don't know if we could look at getting like a flashing sign that says no ride on red. You'd think reading would be a little easier with the multiple signs, but apparently it's not. So we're just a little concerned about that. And that's all we talked about. I yield.
I want to address 2 of those intersections really briefly. The 16th by VetMed and University at Haber. This is one of the more interesting things that I learned when I first got on council, is when the state owns the property on both sides of the road, it's a state street. So we have streets in Ames that actually are not City of Ames streets. And so those 2 actually are under the jurisdiction of the university. The Lincoln Way and Stanton one is us, because it's just the university on one side of the street.
I'm getting this nudge saying, okay, we got to call this thing closed. So I just want to thank student government for inviting us. And I think it was a couple of years ago where we had a meeting just at the end of I think it was in April, and I talked to student government about why can't we do this twice a year. And our goal is, again, to really foster communication. And we represent you. I mean, you are our constituents. I mean, we have 67,000 residents. Each of you, we count as a resident, unless you commute to Ames, and then we'll try and find an affordable house for you so you can go ahead and move into it. So, but we really cherish and we really appreciate the fact that you're here, that you're chosen Iowa State to study. But we always can do better. There's always things that we can do to improve communication. And to that end, there are some initiatives I'm going to be looking at this coming year to foster that, to even improve that even more. But I know that every council member would highly value hearing from those that live in their ward or at large. It's really important. And I understand you're busy. I get it. We're busy. as well too. But we really want to make sure that that Ames really helps serve your needs. There's such a high quality of life here in this community. But thank you for listening. And as you can see, being on council sounds simple, but we get some packets that are 350 pages long on Friday night that we have to digest and read through before Tuesday night. And the expectation of a council member is you read all of that and you understand all of that. Because when you come to a meeting, you've got to really talk about these things. And I appreciate Devin. I mean, Devin has come, he's been a great, you owe me $10, buddy. Anyway, no, but Devin has come and he has expressed the students' opinion and his perspective, and that we really value that. And that position has not always been on council. That was implemented by one of my predecessors. So that's really important, and especially when it came to some things that we talked about early on. There's things that we set policy. We do not run the city. That's the city manager's responsibility, but we set policy. But it is an honor to represent all of you. We really want to continue this conversation. And we're all, as they say, the door is always open. The emails are always read. And to that end, we've had the pleasure of having Madam Speaker on the Parks and Recreation Board, and we have several boards and commissions that have one-year terms specifically because we want to see students on that. And one of the things that I've been very committed to is increasing diversity on our boards and commissions. And I'm really proud of what we've accomplished with Human Relations Commission. We have people from different nationalities and different orientations that are serving on that board, and we have a great cross-section and also an equal male and female representation. Anyway, in January, those positions come open. You can apply online, talk to Madam Speaker. She can point you to, it's very easy to apply, but I would love to be able to point more students to those positions, and if we get a lot of people applying for those, I can always go to council and see if we can actually change a term to be a 1 year. A lot of terms are 3 years. But a lot of them have some of them have 1 year terms, but if you're interested. But it's a great opportunity to really start understanding how the city of Ames works, and I know that Madam Speaker attests to the fact that it's been really beneficial. It's a complex organization, and our budget's almost $250 million. A lot of that's from utilities. There's a lot that goes into it, and that's not just a Parks and Rec budget. She would love that, but anyway. So thank you again on behalf of City Council, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn from our City Council. All right, we are adjourned.
I would just like to say thank you to all the council members for being here. I know taking time out since y'all had a meeting yesterday and being here. We really appreciate being involved in the discussion and updating students on what's going on in the city. And I also appreciate senators sharing their views on certain issues. I know we are really passionate in working closely with the city, and just want to say out there that the conversations don't end after this meeting. The council is very receptive of hearing students' point of views and sharing their what they believe on certain topics and things like that. We have resources like Devin right here. You can reach out to him and he can make sure that the point of view of students is really represented on the council. And I'm sure the emails are out there on the City of Ames website. I know Mayor Hill is really receptive. He loves emails. I don't know if he does, but he does. He does, and even other council members do love emails, and they'll be really receptive of reaching out and hearing out the student population. So make sure, if you have concerns, if you have comments on certain discussions, reach out to the council and make sure your voice is heard. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Awesome. Meeting's adjourned. We'll reconvene at 7:15. Thank you. Yeah, no, it was a beautiful, and looking forward to this spring. if, hello, 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 hello. Hi, if everyone could maybe take your seats. Meeting called to order at 7:15 on October 23rd. We'll go ahead and move into roll call. Senator Advet. Oligard. Bender. Blair. Here. Khan. Crabb. Colbison. Dallinger. Fritz. Green. Gonzalez. Hanyang. Heasley. Johnson. Class. Klein. Klein. Lifford. Ludwig. Mass. Meredith. Mitchell. Origer. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Samanu. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonette. Zastro. Moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance led by Speaker Culbertson. Moving on for programs for tonight, we have Brad, I suppose from the center. If y'all want to if you want to come and talk about, and yes, welcome.
Yeah, I got to lower this mic. I'm not that tall. I'm going to pass around just a reference tool. I'll reference a few times when we chat tonight. So what I'm passing around is, it's a simple tool. It's our business cards. But there's details on the back of the business card I'll reference a few times tonight as we chat. So again, my name's Brad Freihofer. I use they, them pronouns, and I have the privilege of serving as the director of one of the longest acronymed offices on campus, the Center for LGBTQIA+ Student Success. And I've been at Iowa State, I cannot believe it has been 11 years already, but it has been 11 years. And yeah, tonight I was kind of asked just to provide a little overview of what we do and how we serve students and work towards student success here at Iowa State. So I like to start with, it's LGBTQIA History Month, for those who do not know. So I like to start with a little Iowa State and Center history for everybody, because I think there's some pieces a lot of folks may not be aware of. So our office was created and really opened its doors in 1992. When we did, we became the 14th oldest LGBT center on a college or university in the country. And that's a really big point of pride for us. That means we've been almost around here for almost 30 years, which is unbelievable. So we talk about that a lot, and we also talk about the fact that one of the largest student-run LGBT college conferences in the country started here at Iowa State in 1993. It's got one of, I thought our office has a long acronym. This has an even longer acronym. It's called MBLGTACC. Stands for the Midwest Bisexual, Lesbian, Gay, Transgender, Asexual College Conference. It is the largest student-run LGBTQIA+ college conference in the country. It started here at Iowa State in 1993. We have hosted it 3 times, in 1993, 2004, and 2000, most recently in 2012. It is an epic event that has Iowa State roots, and I just love that. I did not know that when I came to the state of Iowa. I had no idea about some of those pieces. But that's really kind of a foundation because we take students, as does the Pride Alliance, one of the student organizations here on campus. They take students to that conference every year. Over 2,000 attendees, 80+ workshops, 4 incredible keynote speakers, and a space to build community like none other in the country. It's really remarkable. And I want to give a little shout out because there's students right now who are planning to submit a bid this February to host that conference back at Iowa State in 2022. So if the students win that bid, that unbelievable conference will be right back here in Ames, Iowa, at Iowa State for its record 4th time. No other institution has hosted 3, much less 4 times. So I want to give a shout out to the students who are in the midst of working with our office and several others in planning for that conference. I want to also thank you all for the work that you all do as student leaders. This is really important work, and our office really appreciates that, and I appreciate the opportunity to address everyone tonight. So what do we do? What do we do in the center? In the Center for LGBTQIA+ Student Success, we are really focused on personal and academic success, community, and leadership for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual and allied students at Iowa State. And we do that in a lot of different ways. So our kind of 4 pillars are around pride, community, leadership, and mentorship. So that's what we do. All of our program services and resources really focus around that. So folks may be aware of our LGBTQA community welcome. It's the 2nd day of classes in the fall. We bring hundreds of LGBTQA students together to really meet each other and build community. And so we do that right away. We're in the midst of LGBTQA History Month right now. That is a whole month of events. We've got 2 more left. So I recommend folks check that out. And our back of our business card will connect you with all that. If you follow us on social media, I highly recommend it. The Center ISU, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I hear Instagram stories are, I hear they're some of the best on campus. So you're going to want to check that out. But you'll get updates on all the LGBTQA events happening on campus through those means on our website, of course, and of course on flyers and other things happening around campus. I wanted to mention just a few of our programs and services. I'm not going to cover all of them. There are way too many to cover tonight, but we'll open for Q&A and you all can ask me what you want to know. But I wanted to highlight a few. And the first is the center space. If folks have not visited the center space upstairs of this building, it's 3224 Memorial Union. It's right up on the 3rd floor. You got to go through the maze. So 10 turns and you'll make it. 8. I love that. I love getting checked on. That's great. Yeah, it's 8 turns and you'll make it. But it is incredible space. We just moved there. This is our first opportunity in our 30 years to be here in the Memorial Union, the hub of student activity. And it makes a lot of sense for us to be over here. If you haven't visited that space, it's absolutely gorgeous. And I recommend folks come in and take a look. That is the space where students can come and build community. They can study. They have access to LGBTQA+ resources, not only across campus, but across the region and the country in that space. All of our 10 to 14 LGBTQA student organizations and interest groups also have a space there so we can centralize some of that information for students. And it's just a hub of activity. I left there earlier, and it was a packed house as folks were getting ready to head to another meeting. So I recommend folks come up there and take a look. And I want to shout out all of the support we've had in moving here from the Memorial Union team, the Dean of Students Office, the Division of Student Affairs, and just students who have showed up and showed out these last 10 years. This is our 3rd move, y'all. We have packed each place we've been, and that's just a testament to Iowa State hiring full-time staff, and we've really made a change since 2008, and it's pretty phenomenal. So I definitely recommend check out the center. One of the other programs we just had the application start live today is our Thrive program. Our Thrive program is a program for emerging LGBTQIA+ leaders. The goal here was to help provide students a space to build some leadership skills, but to do it with an LGBTQA lens. And so it's kind of an amazing program. Over 9 sessions, we get to build community, explore identity, explore the diversity of the LGBTQA community, and we get to go to a national conference, and we get to be able to learn and build some leadership skills. So we are in our 3rd year of that program. Our first 2 cohorts are remarkable, and I'm excited to see what they do as they continue their time at Iowa State. Another really special program for us is Lavender Graduation. If folks have not seen that, I recommend showing up. It's a really special program where we acknowledge the personal and academic accomplishments of LGBTQA graduating students. They get an incredible lavender stole that says Iowa State University, and it has the rainbow flag on it in lavender. It looks absolutely amazing on those graduation gowns. And it's a program that is open to all students, so folks are welcome to attend. It's a super moving experience. During the ceremony, students recognize a Cyclone champion or someone who helped them get to graduation. There is really nothing more powerful. We have tissues at every table because it's really moving to hear what helped people get to graduation. Just like I'm sure all of you in this room, there's someone you might be able to indicate who helped you get there. That's what we want to bring to life at our program. So lab grants at the end of the year, I highly recommend folks checking that out. And then I just want to point out something that may come up in conversation tonight as we chat. But we have a whole host of resources available, not only in our office, but online. So if you go to our website, under workshops and trainings on the top, what you're going to notice is a whole host of things. We have a Trans at ISU guide that helps trans, gender nonconforming, and non-binary students navigate the campus environment and help them gain access to critical resources and tools that may not be as clear or evident as they're trying to honestly get their degrees. And so we try to put that into a space. We have our gender inclusive restroom map on there, for example, which some of you I think are familiar with. We offer some scholarships as well. So for students who are looking for some financial aid assistance, they can take a look at our website as well. You know, beyond that, the ways that I would say for folks in this room and for your constituents to connect with our office is social media is an easy one. So check that out. The Center ISU, Facebook, Twitter, and Insta. But I think you can also go on our website and sign up for our newsletter. You can also get involved with our Center Squad. Our Center Squad is our volunteers, interns, and practicum students who honestly help us do all things in our office. All the events and programs we run and do, our volunteer team is critical for that. We have interns and practicum students right now who are helping us archive over 40 years of LGBTQIA history at Iowa State, and it is epic. So we're in the middle of that project, and there's research projects as well, and some really cool projects we're in discussions with students right now who are in computer science, computer engineering, who are trying to look at how do they build an LGBTQIA inclusion into software development, into app development, into form development, which is kind of awesome. So we're working with them as well. The last little nugget I'll share, and then I really just want to spend time answering any questions that you have today and chatting. This is like, I'm more of a chatter, so we're going to go that route here. But we work with a lot of different units across campus. We partner with departments and offices to help enhance inclusion around gender identity, sexual identity. That's another thing we do. We collaborate with over 47 different campus departments each year on different projects initiatives. So I want to thank our campus partners and just make you all aware that's some of the work that's happening as well on campus. So highly recommend engaging and continue to learn about LGBTQIA history, especially during this month. I want to give a special shout out to Lancelot and Elaine, Iowa State's most famous same-sex couple. For those of you who are unaware, that is a bonded same-sex swan pair, and we just think that's kind of great. So I tip of the hat there as well. But I really want to open up for questions for folks who have it, and let's chat. What else do you want to know that I didn't talk about tonight?
Questions for our speaker. Madam Speaker.
This isn't really a question, but I can confirm the Instagram stories are fire. So that's all. I yield.
Senator Zastrow.
Thank you for coming. I really appreciate that you're coming here advocating for yourself, and I really like all the work that you've done. I mean, the resources that you have are great, and the center seems just like an amazing place for LGBT students. My question is, have you considered adding, and maybe it already is on there, I guess I'm not sure, the gender neutral restroom map to the MyState app?
Oh, has this been a conversation? Yeah, yeah. It's a conversation that's ongoing right now, both the university map and the MyState app. Yeah, we want to see a filter there that allows students to be able to select and check in on gender-inclusive restrooms near them. It's really critical. It helps students get to a restroom that will work for them and amidst their classes. So it is in an ongoing conversation right now, yeah. And I'm excited. Hopefully that can move forward this year. There's a few other projects we've got going around. That Trans at ISU guide I mentioned, We have to update that. It's a few years old now, so we're going through an update this year into next. And that is one of the items on the list. So we'd love it, instead of to be that PDF, we'd love it to be right there for you. One click, get a filter on, and we're ready to go. So there is work to be done there a lot yet, but it has definitely been a conversation topic, especially in the last 2 months.
Awesome. Really glad that you're working on that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yield.
Great question.
Senator Khan.
Hi. You mentioned working with ComSci and computer engineering students. I believe that myself, as a computer engineering student, like I'm sure many other of my friends, would be very interested in getting in touch with you about that. So what would you recommend, like, course of action would be for that?
So yeah, anyone who's interested in partnering, and I want to really share that there are LGBTQIA intersections in every major on this campus. There are so many projects and opportunities ahead of us, and I'm super excited about that. So props to folks who continue to reach out. But folks can contact us using our website, social media. They can email us at center@iustate.edu, give us a call at 294-5433, or just stopping up to the center and inquiring. But email is usually the best way to reach us. We're a small but mighty team up there, so the best way to get a hold of us is probably emailing us at center@iustate.edu.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great.
Chief of Staff Kuzel.
All right, over here.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
Again, just thank you for everything that you and the center does. I think on campus there's just so many great programs, so just thank you for that. I guess one question, and this might be hard to answer. So is there anything, I guess, in the past, even just couple years, trends of things that you've seen students need, I guess? And I know there might be a lot of different things, but have you just seen anything big picture stuff that is coming, that maybe you've already done some things for, that you're working towards? I'm just interested to see your thoughts on just some of those things that students might be needing coming in the future.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot. So I was just actually having a conversation before I came up here tonight around how many students we're meeting with each day and each week. It's a lot. And the concerns are what you would kind of anticipate. It's students who are navigating campus, having questions they're coming out potentially, family, friends. They're navigating healthcare, health insurance, housing, financial aid and financial assistance, food security. You name it, we're in that ballgame each day and navigating some of those concerns and challenges. But general trends we see, yeah, I think around gender identity is really where there's work to be done to assist students to be able to use a chosen name, have a little bit easier process navigating gender marker changes, healthcare access. Those type of things are really quite critical. Even today, I've had, I think, 3 or 4 conversations with students today just around trying to figure out how they might even afford some of the healthcare things that they need. So it is a heavy conversation in the center, and one that students are having quite frequently. So I think, for non-binary students, trans and gender nonconforming students, making campus systems and practices and procedures a little bit smoother for them is not only a trend, but something we're certainly working on in the center. And so are many of our campus departments and units. So we got a long way to go, but we are making some good strides. So I'm pleased about that. And I think continued work within different communities in this LGBTQIA+ acronym. When we hear that acronym, a lot of folks think that it's one like a unified front. That is not the case. There's a lot of conversations and different things happening within that community. And so we're seeing a lot of work needed to be done around anti-racism and really addressing racism in general in the LGBTQIA+ community. And so those are conversations we are having in the center pretty regularly. And why we've kind of created our Queer and Trans People of Color initiatives, which are both events and a collection of faculty, staff, and students coming together to inform those programs. But I think, again, we got a ways to go there as well. But yeah, there's a lot on that list, so we could kind of certainly explore those. And I welcome anyone around the table here tonight to feel free to visit with me anytime if we want to talk and explore what some of those things are. But yeah, that's definitely what we're seeing. We're seeing universities across the country navigate that. I actually just think about the University of Minnesota last night, who was having some conversations on a new policies that they're working on around gender identity and inclusion as well. So it's definitely on the national front. Yep.
Senator Johnson.
Do you have any special programs or guidance for graduate students or non-traditional students that might feel like double removed from the majority population?
Yeah. So what we've been trying, we've got a few things that we're working on. So I'm going to state the 3 areas that we're kind of. I think there's a long way to go, but I think this is our start. The first is we hosted for the first time last spring a queer and trans graduate and professional student social. Now this may sound like, okay, it's a social. What's the big deal? The big deal is that we brought together students who had never met each other, who have been here, some in the cases a few years, had never connected across different colleges. So veterinary medicine, hard sciences, social sciences, all across campus. And so we had just an evening where we could share in community together. And I think for a lot of the grad students who were there that night, they're craving for more of that. And so for us, it's trying to figure out how can we continue to do programming like that and make sure that it's accessible and workable for our grad student schedules. So that's one piece. The other piece is we really want to try to continue to support the work of the Queer Graduate Student Association and the College of Veterinary Medicine Spectrum Group. Both of those are really grad student or professional student oriented, and we just love some of the events that they put on, and we want to continue to enhance that. So if you do follow our center Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, you will see us share. As we're aware of LGBTQIA events happening on campus, we will share them. The challenge is the communication on campus is a little challenging to get out on quick timelines, right? That's why we try to do our best. The Instagram story, that's why I reference a lot of people there, because if I know it, I'll get it up there as quickly as I can. So,
Thank you.
Yep, great question.
Senator, do you yield?
Yes.
Senator Klein.
I'd like to echo the sentiments that everyone else here has. This is an incredible organization that provides so much to so many people here on campus. And I think it's really important that we have services like this. College is a very formative time in people's lives, and for many, this is the first time that they're away from home, and for even more, it's the first time that they can really be themselves openly. So thank you, first of all, for working so hard on this. As I'm sure is pretty common knowledge, LGBTQIA students often have higher rates of mental health issues. Do you have any specific examples of like mental health services that are provided through the center or you're working with?
It's a great question. Mental health is definitely something we navigate regularly in the center space, both through student consultation when we're meeting with students, but also in our programs. Mental health is a major topic, not only just with LGBTQA students, but obviously across college campuses nationally. For us, this is where our partnership with student counseling is really critical. Our counseling staff here are stellar, and we're very grateful for them and our community counselors, folks who are in Ames and in the central Iowa area, for providing really inclusive, welcoming LGBTQA counseling care. And that's really where it starts. That's where we'd certainly refer and recommend students who are navigating mental health challenges or concerns or questions. As we look kind of beyond that, we also know that counseling is also doing some group therapy, and some of that, especially for our trans and non-binary students, there are some opportunities there for group counseling around the gender spectrum, and really want to encourage students to connect there as is appropriate as well. So that's where it is, and we just have open conversations around it in the center. What I really appreciate about the students here at Iowa State, particularly the students who are visiting the center, is it's an open conversation and resources are shared among students, right? Like that's how it goes. We'll also continue to point students in the right direction as they have questions, whether it's around safety, mental health. It's our partnership with ISU Police Department as well. It is it's a team effort to help assist students in this way and help them succeed. So, yeah, I think there's certainly more that could be done ahead, and that's something I think we're going to continue to evaluate as we look at the next few years.
Awesome. And then on a little bit of a lighter note, what kind of projects are you excited about that we're working on right now?
Well, we're in the midst of hiring another staff member, so I'll say that's super exciting. But project-wise, I think the update to the Trans at ISU guide is an important one this year. We're also looking forward to getting into the Campus Pride Equality Index. It's an index that ranks college campuses around LGBTQIA inclusion. So it's a massive project to do that. So we are underway in doing that now. So those are some I'm excited about. And really, the thing that really kind of professionally gets me fired up is working with students who've got great project ideas, who kind of come in and are like, I want to try, I got this idea, but I don't really know, I'm not really sure where to go with it, and just wanted to meet. In 2 minutes, we'll brainstorm some ideas and really work on an idea to help maybe improve and enhance Iowa State University through a project that's of interest to that student, and also will benefit LGBTQIA students across campus. So these are the areas where I love the innovation that's happening, and I get really excited when folks kind of innovate that. And actually, we have one of our events coming up here for LGBTQIA History Month. We're doing a little event on November 1st on Friday, and students came to us for this event. They said, hey, we want to kind of like, we'd like a sober event that allows us to come together in community, have some fun, maybe do, I don't know, like some pumpkin painting, listen to some music, watch some LGBTQA films that we wouldn't otherwise get to check out, listen to some LGBTQA related music, and just be in community for an evening of fun. Well, that's something we can do. So that really started with, again, student ideas coming to us about what they want to do. And that's kind of what I love about our center space.
And then my last question is, what do you think that we can do to help advocate for student LGBTQIA plus student success here on campus?
Well, I just want to say over the last few years, I've been really proud of what student government has continued to work on, whether it's things that when you're drafting legislation or you're working through things, considering the lens or checking in with LGBTQA folks as you're navigating the legislation to talk about what the impact might be. But there's been some moments where things that have happened in here have gotten to the center space where students are having a conversation about whether it's Big 12 expansion a few years ago and who may be included in it, what the impact that might be for LGBTQA people. And there's just been some really great moves. So I think continuing that work is really important. The pronouns, I've heard more pronoun usage in here, and that's amazing. That's great. That continues to hold that as a standard for us on campus, which I think is stellar. And then just getting involved, continue to learn. There's a lot on both our website, but out there across the country on information on what you can do across campuses, whether it's wearing a pronoun button, a rainbow flag, attending events, sharing events. The sharing of events really matters a lot. I know folks think, oh, a simple share, a retweet, a Facebook share, a Instagram share, but that's how we reach a lot of the students. You know, there are thousands of LGBTQA students who we're trying to reach on campus. We got a long way to go to reach all of them. So it helps when folks share and connect. And we're actually doing a little research right now to figure out how are students connecting with us? How are they finding us? Because it's a journey. Sometimes I'll hear from seniors who are like, I didn't even know your office existed. And I'm like, whew, we gotta get ahead of that. I want you to know right away so you can come and build community and find pride in who you are earlier than that.
Awesome. Again, I'd just like to thank you and your organization for really helping to advocate for LGBTQIA plus people here on campus. With that, I yield.
Senator Zastro.
I just have two more questions for you. First of all, are you aware that you currently can't change your name on Canvas and maybe Access Plus too, but I definitely know Canvas. Is that something that you're working on?
Yeah, Canvas is a struggle because it's a third-party service, and so the structure that they have on that system is difficult. It is a conversation we are engaged in to see what we can do there. And my hope is as Canvas continues to update its software and service, and we figure out a better way to serve that connection. It's kind of a complex web, but it is something we can solve and do. But it's going to definitely take some collaboration across that space to do that. But it is necessary. It's really needed for students who maybe even doing that around their net ID change. It gets complicated, and it doesn't always stay consistent. And that's something we would definitely like to see change. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for working on that. Then
Yeah.
the second one's kind of similar. As of right now, Thielen Health Center, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but as far as I know, Thielen Health Center is not able to administer gender therapy, meaning testosterone or estrogen. And is there anything that we as a body can do to help that? Is there anything that they're waiting on for certification? Do you know just anything about that?
Yeah. So yeah, this is the healthcare question has definitely been it's a top question both in Ames, at Iowa State for Iowa State students, and really it's a national conversation. So to some of the earlier question about national trends, Yeah, healthcare access is a biggie because a lot of our students actually travel to Iowa City for what we kind of call healthcare needs in general. There's an LGBTQ clinic there that is able to serve them, but that's 2.5 hour drive, right? Students have to take off usually a day of classes for that and travel and arrange all of that. Some of them don't have vehicles, so we see a lot of carpooling. If you're in the center, you may notice our whiteboards are heavily used. Some of the whiteboard use is to help coordinate some of those needs. But yeah, I would definitely contact and reach out to Aaron Baldwin and the team over at the Thielen Health Center to continue to engage in that conversation. We do know that if a student has already receiving, let's say, hormone therapy, for example, they can continue that. But to start that process, yeah, I'm not aware that at Iowa State they can start that process at this time.
Awesome. Thank you for organizing carpooling. That's, I mean, fantastic.
The students roll it. We just provide the space. But yeah, students are the folks who, again, that's what the center space is really geared towards. And when you go up there and check it out, yeah, I think you'll see what the experience is as you come in. It's kind of meant for that. It's meant for interaction and building community.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
I'll yield.
Further questions for our speaker? Seeing none, thank you,
Thank you very much.
again for coming up. Moving on to open forum. Open forum is an open discussion for issues relevant to students. Anyone wishing to speak can approach the lectern. Just a quick notice to the student body. All students are members and participants in student government, and as such are encouraged to take part in discussion of Senate bills and orders or issues affecting students. Please wait to be recognized by the chair and be courteous to others wishing to speak.
Am I good to go?
Yes.
Okay. So some of us are here today just to talk a little bit about campus climate and what that looks like and how student government can help support the Iowa State community in those initiatives. First off, I will be starting by reading a message that was sent to me as I was communicating with Liliana Delgado. So what I'm about to read, and then I'll end with her name. These are her words, and I'm merely a vessel in here to advocate in this space. Throughout the month of September, the house I'm a community advisor for was vandalized by a racial slur that targets me and some of my residents. I took all of the reporting steps that I was trained to do. Meanwhile, I was trying to deal with this personally. After 2 vandalisms and 2 documentations, I received 0 support or guidance from the DOR, Equal Opportunity, or the Campus Climate Response Team. I live and work at a university that not only allows for these heinous acts to happen, but allows them to happen without providing support to the people targeted and impacted. I was failed by several departments and offices at the university. This past weekend, I made a call to action on a public Facebook post. While this has received lots of attention and positive support, I am disappointed in the behaviors of the university. Iowa State has a reactive mentality, waiting until the damage is done to respond. Instead, we must change to a proactive mentality. The university must work to ensure all its students feel safe and secure at all times. Officials at the university must stop promising an inclusive and welcoming culture until they actually start doing something to promote and make that happen. If we truly want to be an inclusive institution, we must not allow acts like these to go unpunished and unrecognized. There needs to be a zero-tolerance policy for these behaviors, and there must be a faster, more immediate approach to these situations. I am proud to be the face of the conversation I initiated on Facebook, but I feel sorrow that it is under these circumstances. I chose this university because I wanted to be here. Now I want the university to act like it wants me here too. Liliana Delgado. Again, that is Liliana's truth, and she asked me to share that as we were communicating about what we wanted to kind of discuss. I think all of us that are here to talk about this kind of wanted to bring this up. And I know as student government, part of what you all do is advocating and empowerment. So we're here to kind of talk about and discuss maybe what the options are for collaboration between you all and other student organizations so that people can feel more supported on campus and just have a discussion around that.
Good evening. My
My name is Johnny Campbell, he, him, his. I am a second-year graduate student in the higher education program, and I serve as president of the Black Graduate Students Association. I'm concerned for our students, our peers. Some of you are in classes together. Some of you live on the same floor. But racialized incidents and other incidents that tend to lean towards hate speech is becoming more and more rampant on our campus. And as student leaders, and as Michaela stated within the purpose of student government, that right for advocacy and empowerment is stated as a right, as a fundamental right, but also a prerequisite, right? So from what I understand there, we need that in order to foster the success and that advocacy that we are then promoting as an organization. And as student leaders, I feel it's important that we come together to combat the messages that we see regularly occurring on our campus, right? The feeling of welcome is being combated with some form of resistance that is now being responded to with nothing, in my opinion, from the position of student leaders. And I do feel strongly when I say coming together in collaboration to develop a plan of action for this is of importance right now. It's a high importance. Students in my organization, specifically Black Graduate Student Association, come from all over the world, right? This means that they're navigating the concept of race differently than we do as domestic students that are born and raised in America, right? We know racism differently than a student that may come from anywhere from around the world. So not only are they navigating learning what race is, they're also having racialized experiences, and they may not even be aware of it, right? And in my opinion, I believe it is now the responsibility of us as student leaders to advocate and really defend them, right? And whatever that looks like from an educational standpoint, I think we as student leaders should lead that charge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julissa Garcia, and I'm currently a senior studying journalism. I am an executive member of the Multicultural Greek Council, my sorority, Lambda Theta Alpha Latin Sorority Incorporated, and I'm also student coordinator in the Office of Sorority and Fraternity Engagement. I'm brought to you today because of specifically what Johnny and Michaela spoke about, specifically about these racial incidents that have occurred on campus. In discussion with my sisters of my own organization, we kind of discussed our own feelings about these incidents, really bringing into dialogue of how we are bringing these conversations to life in our own organizations or with our own friends. And I think that's really important to start with. But I think we all have the same trend that they're just words being shared, but there's no action being done. With President Winterstein's statement and just statements from other faculty or administrations, it seems like the same words are being repeated about advocating for our communities, going against discrimination, bigotry, and xenophobia, but no real work is being done. It seems like these actions are only brought to dialogue and conversation when they're on the news. So specifically speaking about the incident with Liliana Delgado, as someone who identifies as Mexican American, I imagined her as one of my own sisters, like blood sisters, and considering how I would feel in that situation when you're trying to, you wanted to be in this role, you wanted to be a community advisor, and the people that you thought that would back you up in these situations are not there for you. So maneuvering in these spaces as people of color, as in these marginalized communities, how we can bring this to action. I think about the people around me and how I would want them to grow in this environment. And I often think about the incoming students. As an incoming student, I grew up in a very diverse community back in Chicago, so coming to Iowa State was a real culture shock. And here at Iowa State, like, I really just learned more about racism, white supremacy, and all that. And I think about the future of our incoming students, and when they come into this environment, how can we not only share with them the resources and how to like identify as part of a marginalized community and grow at Iowa State, but what actions they can do to advocate for themselves. Because I just feel like words are often being shared, but no actions really being done.
Now kind of speaking on behalf of myself and some of my own experiences. My name is Michaela Schote. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm currently serving my second term as president of the Multicultural Greek Council. I work in a couple of spots on campus, and I'm also a proud member of Sigma Lambda Gamma National Sorority Incorporated. I know for some people this might be an uncomfortable situation or conversation, I guess, to have. But the reality is for a lot of students on campus, that's the type of uncomfort they face every day. And I know as student government, you all are here to like advocate and to support students. And so we would like to see some more collaboration, and both MGC and I believe BGSA are open to collaboration into furthering this. We just know that between microaggressions and sometimes just blatant racism on campus, that this greatly affects students, especially students of color, and not just mentally, but also sometimes physically, academically. It really is affecting all aspects of their lives. So we would like to see what our options are and kind of have an open discussion. So if you all have any questions, I think we're ready for that.
President Graber. First off, thank you all three for coming in. I really appreciate you coming in and bringing this up to all of us. And thanks to Liliana as well. I don't know if she's watching, but thank you. We appreciate your courage and your willingness to step up. So I think all of what you have said is exactly true, and I agree with all of it. We had a wonderful meeting today. Johnny and Michaela were both set up by Dr. Harmon to address the campus climate and to see what we can do moving forward. And actually next week, I have a meeting with Vice President Bhatia and Reg Stewart, who's the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion, because we are in the works of creating what's going to be called a civility campaign. And so this is kind of actions to put the principles of community into work, and like you said, not just being words, but actually putting in the action. So I want to loop you all three and Liliana in on that conversation to make sure that we are representing all of students and we are voicing those concerns. So thank you again for coming, and we appreciate and look forward to working with all of you. President, do you yield?
Yep.
Senator Searles.
Permission to address the speakers.
Yes, you may.
Thank you all for coming in. This is obviously incredibly important. It should be pretty much at the top of all of our agendas. I wanted to add substance. I'm also a community advisor. I'm going into my 4th year as a community advisor. And I think what's important to recognize is that though there may be 1 or 2 incidents publicized, for every 1 or 2 incidents publicized, there are at least 20 that go unnoticed or unpublicized. In my years as a community advisor, I have covered up swastikas, as many as 5 in one day, at various locations around a single building. I've seen residents cry because they had racially motivated death threats posted on their door that were not taken seriously by police, by the university, by the administration, or by my staff. I've seen people have to move for their own safety. And this morning I held a friend who was crying because she doesn't feel safe on campus, and she is a woman of color. As a student government senator, as a representative for the students, and as a community advisor, I had nothing to tell her. I didn't know how to support her. As a white man, I know I can't relate to the same level that she feels it. I know it doesn't hit me the same. But there's nothing that we've talked about that I was able to tell her to make her feel better. Right now, I don't know if she's okay, but I'm here having this discussion. There are people with her right now. I'm holding back tears right now, if I'm being honest, I'm being shaky. I don't know if it's from nerves or from the lot of coffee I had before this, probably a little bit of both, but if this is not the first priority we have to ensure our students' safety, the people we represent, then we are failing as the Senate. It should not be a question as to whether or not we should eventually do this. We are reactionary. I've seen it time and time again. This is my 4th year as a community advisor.
The amount of people we've seen have mental health crises because we don't address the issues until it's too late is ridiculous. I would encourage us to put this at the top of our agendas, put this at the top of our radar. If we need a task force, if we need some sort of action taken now, then we need to do it because too many people are suffering, too many people are scared, and people eventually are going to get hurt if they're not already, and if it's not being publicized. And we know that this leads to a lot more. If we do not address that, we are failing. I'm going to yield, let myself calm down a little bit, and I might have some more to talk about later. Thank you.
Senator Klein.
I would like to echo everything that Senator Searles just said. This is absolutely horrendous that this happened. We did discuss this at the Diversity and Inclusion meeting yesterday, and I plan on bringing this up to the IRHA meeting tomorrow. As evidenced here, words have real power, and many people don't feel safe within the communities that they are a part of. And that is absolutely something that we need to feel ashamed about here at Iowa State. If we can't protect our residents, if we can't protect our people from hatred, bigotry, then we are failing as a university. People expect to feel safe when they are being educated. And the fact that we don't have safeguards in place is really a travesty. Action absolutely needs to be taken. And I, for one, will be right there with you in advocating for that. I yield.
Senator Zastro.
Thank you all for coming. I was talking with Women of Color earlier. She was actually talking about the exact same stuff that you guys were, about how the principles of community are a great idea, but we have really failed to implement them in a way that's significant. And I think that Senator Searles and Senator Klein have articulated this as well. Her proposal actually was that we should not have the principles of community if we're not willing to follow through on them. So my question would be to President Graber, what actions do you intend to take to implement the principles of community that are currently in place?
Great question. Yeah, I think that's what that civility campaign is trying to address. I've had a meeting with Dr. Hurt. We have monthly meetings with Dr. Hurt, and when he came to Iowa State, he was just like, I don't want these to just be words. And so he's on board as well, and we're all looking for the answer, and that's what we're going to try to do in that civility campaign. That's the best answer I have right now.
Okay, thank you.
Senator, do you yield? Senator Hanyang.
Thank you for coming again. I can't remember which one of you said it, but I really appreciate your comment on being proactive in these sort of situations as opposed to addressing them after they happen. I believe that for the past month, we've seen a lot more students take their opinion to campus, whether it's through chalking, whether it's through social media, whether it's through writing and dialogue on campus. And one of the ways that this has really been dangerous to these situations is when people don't take it seriously, whether it's faculty, whether it's us as student leaders. Many students and many members of our university are treating these incidents and incidents like it as a joke, and basically kids being kids. We're at a university, we're adults now. The excuse that people are joking around is getting very old. And as a person of color who has experienced both microaggressions and racial incidents on campus, I can attest to the fact that those things, even if they seem like a joke to the person giving them, they really do impact you if you feel like you're in the affected party. With the fact that we're at a university, at a public university, where people of all backgrounds, even of privileged backgrounds, will come in here and maybe not know the same things as those who have been affected by racial incidents. I really think that we need some sort of venue to have civil discourse about these sort of incidents. So, President Graber, I really appreciate your response to this. Obviously, it sounds like a lot of members of Senate are interested in helping with this, and I know that I would be interested in doing the same. So I yield.
Senator Renchi.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming. One thing that you talked about is just cutting right down to it. What's the first step that you see that we could take as a Senate to get going in the right direction to help you take this forward? What's the just right first step today?
So I want to make sure I acknowledge the challenge with that question. Right now, we have targeted incidents that are targeting students of color, and we're asking students of color to fix a problem that they did not create. So I want us to acknowledge that and understand the issue that happens there. The collaborative effort is what's needed, because just because it's targeting students of color does not make it solely a student of color problem. The commonality there is student. It's a student problem, which makes it your problem. And understanding that, and then collectively creating an actionable plan to combat that is what I believe the first step needs to happen. So in regards to other things, questions that have been stated to President Austin, I think it's important that we acknowledge that it's not just Austin's role. We're not coming here today to ask student government to do the job. We are asking student government to work with us so that we can do the job.
And the second piece I want to touch on is in the letter that you talked about, or in the letter which you brought forward, and there was a mention of a zero tolerance. Is that something you three have thought of? Is that something that you three would like to describe what you see that as meaning? Because I think it should just be addressed that we talk about what that means and what the process is for taking a student who has transgressed those lines and reforming them as opposed to a zero tolerance.
So again, I want to just remind everyone that was Liliana's message that she asked me to read, so I can't speak on her behalf. But for me, something really important throughout my life has been when you look at oppression and systems of oppression, and that's part of it, it's systematic. Being neutral isn't enough. Being not racist isn't enough. You have to be anti-racism. And anytime you're neutral or you choose the neutral ground, you're choosing the side of the oppressor. So keep that in mind, and this needs to be a regular conversation, a conversation that is happening across people with all identities, because it is already happening in communities, especially affected, including students of color. So yeah, it needs to not be neutral. You have to go for it. And I would be lying if I said that I thought absolutely no one was going to have any backlash. But at the end of the day, you have to decide what side of this debate do you want to be on, and I hope that you choose to support students who aren't feeling supported on campus.
I think I would like to add to that, if that's okay. So currently right now, our climate has student leaders who feel desensitized to these incidences, right? We are now growing as leaders, as professionals, as the world changers, right? Not being concerned with racialized incidences and other incidences of oppression that really spans outside of race, many marginalized identities and underrepresented identities. And so having that said, I think it's important to note that we work collaboratively for the focus of education and understanding what this looks like and understanding it through shared stories and experiences. And then also collectively approaching this with an ethic of care and enough of a care to want to do something about that issue.
Awesome. Certainly not easy questions to answer, so thank you very much. I yield.
Madam Speaker.
Okay, hi everyone. I want to say thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today and sharing your truths and everything, and calling upon what our purpose is, which is to advocate. So I'm grateful that you're all holding us accountable for what we're here to do. I had a question for President Graber. The civility campaign, do you have maybe like a loose timeline maybe on when that might be formed, and like maybe some of what will be kind of discussed right away? Just for my own clarification.
Yep, so the original intent was for it to go from November to November. It was mainly around the political climate, given that the university becomes more politically hostile during that time, so they wanted to be proactive in terms of that and go November because that's before the election starts to kick in. So it was November to November, but again, I haven't met with him yet, so that's still a timeline.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to offer up that I think there is a lot of interest in this room to collaborate with you all. So I will happily contact you after this meeting so that you have my contact information. If you feel that things aren't quite moving fast enough, that you want that collaboration right away, I will happily help organize that in whatever way possible, just so we can make sure that that's happening, because you came here and asked for that, and we want to make sure that you all get that. So thank you. I yield.
Senator Stanley.
I think one thing that's abundantly clear is that the time has passed for statements and words. I think we need to have concrete action soon. I trust President Graber and Vice President Bhatia. I trust that your meeting with Dr. Stewart and Dr. Harmon potentially will be fruitful, and that you will bring us solutions that I'm sure we will be able to put to good use. I trust our Diversity and Inclusion Committee to find some answers and to stay on the pulse of student input. The engineering senators and I will be discussing this with our constituency council, certainly. Potentially we will be implementing a version of the feedback form that the engineering senators last year used for the trademark incident. And I encourage all of you to speak with your constituency councils as well to make sure that they are up to date on the issue, because that is essentially your responsibility to ensure that they are kept in the loop and that they know exactly what your stance is and what you plan to do. So thank you. Keep that in mind.
Do you? Senator Crabb.
Hi, I want to say thank you again for coming, and I'd like to say that hopefully a lot of our Senate holds the same beliefs and values that you three do. So I visited the D&I committee this week, and I met this girl, Trinity, sat by me, and she was talking about the sidewalk chalk, and like we've all seen it as well, and we've also seen it all crossed out, and she told me that her and her floor, which is about like 5 or 6 people, they used to go out at night hours and just cross out stuff. And there's also like, there's people like screaming racial slurs on campus that I've seen and probably all of you have seen, but I don't know if you've addressed or not. So like, yes, it's awesome to have these huge initiatives and stuff, but if you see stuff on campus and you really do care, take time, get a group of friends to cross things out. If you see a sticker on a building, take it off. If you see someone getting harassed, and that's just an open thing to everyone in this room. Yeah.
I'd like to respond to that. I think it's really important to document those things and to submit them to the correct people. I know for some people, contacting like law enforcement can be a scary situation, and I hope that's something that both ISU PD and the administration are working on how to address that. But it's really important as well that you make sure to document that so that action can be taken appropriately.
I yield.
Senator Blair, if you.
Yeah, sure. So again, thank you. I've helped friends deal with these sort of things, had dealt with them myself, and I do agree with that it's reactionary here. But sometimes I think it's even worse than reactionary because it seems less about protecting people and making people safe and more about like mitigating like legal liability for the university, or at least that's how I felt, or I know people who I've talked to have felt when they're dealing with the university. That's not about safety, it's about, who's gonna get sued and are we covered? And so I feel like that's just not how it should be, of course. And then I don't know enough about the civility campaign, but the word civility makes me nervous, especially how it's used recently. I think this is not a two-sided issue, like the hate's going one direction, and so civility I think implies some sort of balance. And I just think in general, like civility, like when defined by the majority or the powerful, like is oppression. And so to make sure that this is something that's not about like, you say this and I'll say this and we can all just be friends, because that's not okay, that's not enough, so. But yeah, we definitely will take more action. I can't think of anything or like want to say right now what I would think we should do, but we will, for sure. It's not okay. I yield.
Senator Johnson.
I
I just actually wanted to back you up. Civility is often used as a weapon against marginalized communities, and it is quite significant that we maybe use language that is stronger and more forceful than that. That is all I have to say. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Senator Samuel.
Yeah, going off that, so I think the first steps we could take as Senate or just people in general is making sure that people who come to you about these problems feel validated and that they don't feel that you just want to jump to an action, but making sure that they know that you support them and you actually care about their feelings, because the impact is not something that you can take away in one day or by an action. It's something that they need support throughout years or even like leading up to the action. So it's not just about the action, but it's about making sure that they feel validated and that something's actually getting done. I yield.
Senator Bender.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of these conversations in like school business. So like things that you can do, communicate with like your MLOs, communicate, table, just talk to like your constituents, communicate, and just like open up the conversation. Me and Josh both have talked to our MLO before and just talked about those microaggressions and how we can change those. So just an opportunity to think and talk about it.
For individuals that don't know what MLO is, Multicultural Liaison Officers. Senator Searles.
Okay, calm down a little bit. Just a quick reminder, make sure we're using the correct pronouns when referencing people. And I just wanted to echo Trinity, what they were talking about, direct action is great. But I wrote it down, you said it, making sure you're supporting those around you that also are feeling the impact of this. So for me, that's where it comes in, obviously, like because of the identities I hold. Now this next point, I guess could probably get me in trouble. Not here. But I think one of the biggest issues I've noticed, and I mentioned it, is that there's a lot of protecting abusers because abusers are clients, especially when they pay the university to live here. And some departments have done a lot to protect those people because they're customers and they pay thousands of dollars to live here. So I think if we want to talk about direct action, we're not fighting against the university. I'm not trying to insinuate that, but we need to work with the department that I work for and that many of us have worked for to end the protection. There's due process, but there's also looking out for the people that deserve it. In this case, a community advisor. In many cases, the other residents. It's not a due process on, oh, well, let's really get down to the facts. These facts are pretty simple. They're pretty clear. The due process is, there's a problem, fix it. Get rid of the problem. Not the civility thing. There's not, quote, good people on both sides. So that's not the issue. We need to stop protecting abusers. So I would urge us to start there as well. And I'm on board for that. I yield.
Further comments? Thank you. Further speakers for open forum? Awesome. Moving on to adopting tonight's agenda. Are there any changes or additions to tonight's agenda? Senator Class.
Move to strike, or not, sorry, move to table 2019-2-035F. Can I do two at once?
Table to 1 week?
Can I,
Oh.
Table indefinitely at the current moment.
Oh, table indefinitely. Second. There's been a motion to table 2019-2-35F to indefinitely, and there's been a second. Are there any objections to tabling that bill? Seeing none, the bill has been tabled indefinitely. Senator Class.
Move to table 2019-2-036F indefinitely.
There's been a motion to table 2019-2-36F indefinitely, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill has been tabled indefinitely. Senator Class. Senator Zastro.
Motion to add 2019-2-41 to the bottom of new business, funding dance marathon.
2019-2 dash,
41F.
and you said funding dance marathon?
Yes.
There's been a motion to add 2019-2-41F, funding dance marathon, to the bottom of new business. And there's been a second. Are there any objections to adding the particular bill? Seeing none, the bill has been added.
Motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
There's been a motion to adopt tonight's agenda, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the agenda has been adopted. Moving on to approval of last week's minutes. Are there any changes to last week's minutes? There's been a motion to approve last week's minutes, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the minutes has been approved. Moving on to committee reports, starting off with rules with Madam Speaker.
I was absent, so Vice Speaker Schrader covered for me.
Yeah, we started off rules. We talked with our election commissioner, Rizvich, about what it would take to do a special election, and if that's feasible, if it follows our bylaws. The answer is it does. We have the power to. Election Commission could do it. And the discussion centered around that a date for a special election for constitutional amendments should probably happen in early December, just to make the timing work. And then we also went through court reform, hammering out specific wording of the Constitution so we can try and get, in the next couple of weeks, the Constitution bill up quickly, and then work on the bylaw bill throughout. In case you all vote to put it on a special election, we at least have that part ready to go. And then we sent the bills that are on second read all favorably. We were a little rushed for time, so please check them out for yourself and make sure that, and verify them and kind of double check our work a little bit there because we were a little rushed at the end. Thank you.
Questions for Vice Speaker Schrader? Seeing none, we move down to Finance Committee with Finance Director Mueller.
So Senate discretionary account is currently at about $15,000. If we fund everything today, we will be at about $10,000 for the rest of the year, not just the semester, so that everybody is aware on that total. Debt contracts, sorry, we had to strike both of those. Orgs think that they're ready, and then they're not quite ready because debt contracts is a contract for multiple years, so they have to go through lots of just make sure that it's okay with Sports Club Council, it's okay with their different advisors, everybody in their club. So sometimes those take a little longer than expected, so I apologize for that. And then also, if you are buying anything on the P card, make sure you're letting me know ahead of time, but also everything that you buy on the P card or I buy that you're using is student government property. So anything that's left over, anything you don't use must be left in the Senate office or somewhere appropriate, because that is Stu-Go's stuff. You can't buy a bunch of stuff and then keep the leftovers. Just so you're all aware, we will be keeping track of that so we can all use it in future. And we do have stuff in the Senate office if you need various office supplies for different events, whatever. We have a lot of that stuff already, so please reach out to Kelsey, is really good at keeping track of all of that stuff, or me, and we usually have a lot of stuff for you already. Thank you.
Questions for Finance Director Mueller? Seeing none, we move down to Student Initiatives Committee with Senator Rowling.
Hi, everybody. So tomorrow, plan to get an omnibus email from me with all the dates and the signups for events that I'm going to mention below here. So we have pop-up shops coming up next week. We'll go ahead and we'll send out signups and all the information for that in that said email. Well, our library date is still pending. We're still kind of working with getting a tabling within that building. In addition, next week, we're going to look for a bill on our winter awareness project this fall. Also during committee, we spoke about several ongoing projects like I Love Ames, and additionally, there is a project that is coming along that is concerning food insecurity, so talk to Senator Stanley, Rachel Orger, or Election Commissioner Rizvik if you're interested in working on that as well.
Questions for Senator Rowling? Seeing none, we move down to PR Committee with our Senior Director of Communications, Murphy.
What's up, y'all? Yesterday we had a meeting, went really well. Talked about a couple different things in regards to Senator Rowling's events that are coming up. So that's one thing that Director of Outreach Carrie Swartz is either reaching out tonight or tomorrow with chances to sign up for that. We need about 1 to 2 people at the tables, and we really need people. So if you have some free time Even an hour is great. Please go ahead and sign up. We really need the help. Also, we talked about a way to get clubs a chance to get the word out. So obviously student government can't just post any flyers that clubs want, but we actually want to find a way to help clubs in that process. So that's one thing that we're working on as PR committee. Also, please take a look at our social media campaign. We want all of y'all to be giving us feedback and ways that we can improve. We don't want to just be posting things that we think are relevant and helpful to students, but obviously you as senators represent a very large population. So please, if you have any comments, concerns, or ways to help us grow and reach more students, reach out to me, Carrie, Josh, Mackenzie, who are on the committee as well. And then really, we just want to make this better as possible. We're killing it. That's it.
Questions for Senior Director Murphy? Senator Hanyang.
Not really a question, but if you haven't yet, you should check out Mackenzie Meredith's Get to Know You form and fill that out so that she can post about you on social media. That's all.
Thank you, Senator Hanyang. Moving on, we move down to diversity and inclusion with our Director Hoffman.
Hello, everybody. So just a couple quick updates. The first is that we are moving forward on our hygiene project, which, just to give some background, that's just essentially moving projects or products like pads and tampons on more restrooms and more places around campus. So including things like family restrooms, gender nonconforming restrooms, and just kind of moving forward of having it in more spaces on campus. And so we're working alongside our lovely director, Raya, and also with the student health and wellness and just kind of moving forward with that. We're also still working on our flag project and trying to send out some emails. We're not really hearing back from people, so we're just trying to figure out what the next steps are with that. And then also today, myself, Vish, and Austin went to the Academic Affairs Council that's like within the Faculty Senate, where we talked about the classes and the courses under U.S. diversity. So essentially, what are those classes? They're really looking at ways to adapt and to change that moving forward. So do we want to change the name? Do we want to change the classes? What are students wanting? A lot of this conversation is just essentially coming out from what U.S. diversity was when this originally started, like 15, 20 years ago. U.S. diversity and the conversations that we're having around it are very, very different now. And so they were very, very, I keep saying very, they were open to hearing our thoughts and what students wanted. And so because of that, if you would like to email either myself, Austin, or Vish, just kind of talking about different things that you think about it, like what classes, kind of just, they really want to hear students' comments on it. So they're in the planning stages right now, and they're very invested into what we had to say. And so we're going to be going back, I think, in a week or two, or whenever they'll next have us. And so just kind of talking around that. So if you have any questions, please, I'll be here until the end of the meeting, or just email me afterwards. That's it.
Questions for Director Hoffman? Seeing none, we move down to civic engagement with Senator Jonette.
All right, hello everyone, happy Wednesday. So earlier today, Civic Engagement had a meeting and we went over a few things. One of the things that we're working on is the local election is coming up quick, and in fact, most relevant to Iowa State students is the Ward 4 election in Ames. And so one way that we're trying to get the word out for that is there's a Ward 4 candidate forum next week. That's Wednesday at 5:30. And so next week, Civic Engagement is going to have a couple little tabling events where we're going to get the word out to students, let them know what their Ames ward is, where they could go to vote for this election. And then other things we talked about, I was reached out to by Carolyn from the League of Women Voters. They are working on setting up an event early February. It's called a legislative wake-up. And essentially what it is bringing in like our representatives in the state level kind of to Ames, to Iowa State, to have a little like morning coffee, get to know you kind of thing, just to give students the opportunity to talk to the people that represent them. So we're working on that. Then another initiative we're doing is we're trying to get more permanent voter registration areas on campus. And so one way we're moving towards that is trying to get them in the residence halls. So a couple of our at-larges have started talking to kind of higher-ups in the DOR to see how we can work towards getting that implemented at like the hall desks. So
Questions for Senator Jonette? Vice Speaker Schrader.
More of a comment.
Iowa State won the Iowa Campus Compact Civic Action Award for increasing our voter turnout. So that was something that Civic Engagement Committee was involved in. Senator Tonette was involved in a little bit too, just a little bit. And so yeah, we won the statewide award for having, for winning the most, increasing our voting by the most, and doing kind of a lot of advocacy efforts around that. So good job, everybody.
Senator Zastrow.
You said the Ward 4 candidate forum was next Wednesday at 5:30. Do you know where that is?
Yeah, it's in the MU. It is in the sunroom.
Awesome. Thank you. I yield.
Further questions? Seeing none, we move down to comments from the executive branch with President Graber.
Hello, everyone. Again, I apologize for sending it out on the second email, not the first one. I apologize. Don't impeach me for that. So Cabinet did not meet on Monday because we had our homecoming student government basketball game. Daggers for Democracy hit one dagger in our game. We lost by 5. It was unfortunate, but it's okay. We had fun. So just as a reminder, homecoming's this week, so get excited for that. This Friday, I'll be presenting the awards for all the homecoming events at the pep rally. We also have some student government members that are on homecoming court. So Chief of Staff Kuzel and our Director of Residency, Marty Broadnax. Did I say her last name right? Probably. Let's go. Is also on the court, so cheer him on. And then we also did the Painting Victory Lane last Saturday. So we painted a plane that was drawn by our graphic designer, Jenna McCarthy. We didn't do the best at getting her image, but it was good. It was good. As Elena mentioned, we had our Academic Affairs Council meeting today. Last Friday, Vice President Bhatia and I met with Carol Custer of Iowa State Marketing to talk about our logo and the future of that. It wasn't the best, but we're going to be renegotiating that, so stay tuned for that. We also had a meeting with the Dean of Students yesterday. Vice President Bhatia and I met with Dr. Hurt just to talk about some issues. We talked about the campus accessibility review event that Director of Student Services Rachel Orger has been working on with President of Alliance for Disability Awareness. And then we also talked about that civility campaign that I discussed today. And then this Thursday, Vice President Bhatia and I will be getting a tour of the Student Innovation Center. So we'll have some feedback on that. We've heard a lot of noise about it, so we'll get to have a chance to look inside. Excuse me, wow. We'll have a chance to look inside, so we'll give feedback on that as well. Any questions? Sorry, that was a ramble.
Questions for President Graber? Seeing none, we move down to external matters. Within external matters, general orders. Within general orders, we move down to 2019-2-32F, funding genre, with Senator Zastrow.
Yeah, so we saw this in Finance Committee yesterday. This is Genre's request for practice space, which they didn't have enough details for us to discuss earlier. So first, I'll motion to accept Finance Committee's amendments.
There's been a motion to amend the bill and accept the amendments proposed by the Finance Committee, and there's been a second. We move into the discussion of the amendments. Senator Zastrow.
Yeah, call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, call to question on the amendment, sorry, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we move into a placard vote, and there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendment by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Zastrow.
Cool, so do you want to talk a little bit about this?
I'm Ben Resenchek, treasurer for Genre Music Club. Go by the pronouns he, him, his. So this is, again, just an update to our previous meeting where we discussed getting funding for practice space. Funny enough, the day after we had the meeting, we actually completely finished out all our plans, got all the reports back for the expected costs. So just breaking down the bill, currently we have 7 hours per week, so that's broken up into 7 one-hour time slots for bands and clubs to meet, or bands and groups to meet. Multiplying that by the $25 an hour and then the number of weeks that we expect to practice is how we came up with the total costs for that. overall, our primary focus as a club is getting musicians together, getting people that are interested in music together. And the easiest way to do this is by providing free to students practice space so they can collaborate, grow, try new things, and just experiment with music.
Yeah. So then one last point I have, Finance Director Mueller has already articulated that we have about $15,000 left in this account. We are able to add $20,000 to that account at some point. That is the maximum amount that we will be able to add, so that's a total of $35,000 that we have left in that account for the rest of the year. I think that this is a great cause. I would also encourage Senate to consider whether or not the full $4,000 should be funded. I'll yield.
Senator Class.
Yeah, so just wanted to, we've funded their practice space previous years. They had better deals previous years on space and cost. So I guess you might be able to answer this better, but I'm just going to speak for you really fast. So he just, in our meetings, they talked about how they didn't have that space anymore. We're trying to contact people. So they tried really hard to find it and deals, but this is what they ended up with. So they have to practice to be a band. Take that as you will. I yield.
Senator Rowling.
Hi, thanks for coming tonight. So just a few basic questions. I know we went over this in Finance Committee, but just for the Senate. Could you speak why your group didn't come to annual allocations last year?
Yeah, definitely. From my understanding, I'm the new treasurer. I've only been in this for about a month and a half now. From my understanding, the past 2-3 treasurers did just about nothing. For the normal budget review, that treasurer, the leadership tried to get in contact with them several times, just reminding them, hey, we need to go to this, you need to get everything prepared. And they couldn't get a response out of them, and by the time that they were trying to scramble people together to obviously get the money we need, it was too late.
Excellent. And I know that you guys looked at alternative locations, and you previously had a cheaper location off campus, but that, if my understanding is correct, that price is now kind of skyrocketed?
Correct. They're also under new ownership, so the previous ownership that we were with, they had an awesome deal with us. It was like $5 an hour or something instead of 25.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your work in trying to find alternative locations. I know that you've been working with Finance Committee in order to try to get the best amount allocated for the amount of hours that we can give you at this time, since we are now in special allocations instead of annual allocations. So thank you for coming and speaking with us tonight.
Thank you.
To you. Senator Rinchi.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming in. If it was $5 an hour before, I mean, that makes sense as to why you're asking for $4,000. Otherwise, I was going to open up and ask why about like 80% of your budget you were asking from here, and I was going to ask you where else you were looking for funding and if there was ways that we could help you find other funding as well. So can you tell me like what you're doing to look for other funding, whether it be through the department or through other locations?
Just to clarify, like other funding sources or other areas that we need funding for?
Other funding sources. Thank you.
Okay. Currently, we just mostly sustain off of dues and some fundraising projects. We're looking into getting T-shirts and buttons, stickers, those kind of things we can sell at concerts or just generally at meetings to try to help give us a little bit of buffer in the funding.
What can we as a Senate do to help make those a better source of funding for you?
I suppose I don't think that Student Gov can help fund fundraising projects. Oh, yeah, you're shaking your head. Okay. That's pretty much the only thing that comes to mind is just helping, again, so we don't have to cover the cost of the items we're trying to sell, just so all of that can go straight into money we can use.
Awesome. Thank you. I yield.
Vice Speaker Schrader.
Yeah, I'll do a quick. Okay, I'll do a quorum call.
Thank you. There's been a quorum call. Y'all know the drill. Present or here. Senator Vet, Oligard, Bender, Blair, Khan, Crab, Culbertson, Dollinger, Fritz, Green, Gonzalez, Hanyang, Heasley, Johnson, Class, Klein, Lifford, Ludwig, Mass, Meredith, Mitchell, Origer, Rinchi, Rolling, Samanu, Schrader, Searles, Stanley, Samuel, Tonette, Zastra. We do have quorum.
Great. And I get the Senate discretionary argument, but it seems a little ridiculous to constrain ourselves to $30,000 this semester when we have $800,000 sitting in special projects. I understand the goal of that limit is to encourage annual allocation, but when we have that much money, it would seem a tad odd to limit ourselves to a lower cap when we've already taken this money from student fees. Now, if you all think that's too much and you would like to lower fees, I'm sure that I would join you on a message to our members on the fee committee. But we already taxed it from students. So I guess I don't find that argument especially convincing. But, I mean, we can waive bylaws. We have a clear process now when we get to it. And that seems like something that we should end up doing this year. I think that this is a wonderful funding bill that enables a club to fulfill its purpose, and that's what we use the student activity fee for. And with that, I will yield.
Senator Zastrow.
Yeah, Vice Speaker Schrader, I agree. I would note, though, that it is mandated in the bylaws that we spend between $20,000 and $60,000 from the Senate discretionary fund, and then no more can be allocated. If you want to waive a bylaw, the other bill that we have does not allow for the waiving of bylaws in Section 11, which is where that's dictated, which would mean we need a bylaw bill to change the bylaws. I'll let Senator Ludwig respond to that.
Senator Ludwig. Mike.
So that process was mostly defining the way that we waive bylaws in relation to like committee assignments and stuff like that. There are still standing precedents for how we've waived other bylaws, and we can change that rule if we want to, and take money out of special projects. So it's
Okay, so, well, my suggestion would be that we have enough money to fund everything tonight. I think Rules Committee and Finance Committee should discuss that at a later time. And if there are no other placards up, I will call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill as a whole, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we move down to roll call voting. Senator Bender. Blair.
Yes.
Khan. Crab. Culbertson. Dollinger. Green. Hanyang. Johnson. Class. Klein. Thank you. Senator Klein, you're not in. I haven't marked you present because there was a quorum call and you weren't present. Senator Ludwig. Mitchell. Origer. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Samanu. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonette. Zastrow. With a vote of 24 to 0 to 0, this funding request passes. There's been a quorum call. Senator Vett, Olicard, Bender, Blair,
Here.
Khan, Crab, Culbertson, Dollinger, Green, Hanyang, Gonzalez, Fritz, Heasley, Johnson, Class, Klein, Lifford, Ludwig, Mass, Meredith, Mitchell, Origer, Rice, Rinchi, Rolling, Samanu, Schrader, Searles, Stanley, Samuel, Chonet. Zastro. We do have quorum. I just want to remind Senate that we are really close on the quorum. So if you do have to leave the room, it should be like emergency. So thank you. Moving on to 2019-2-34F, funding hockey pep band with Senator Lifford. Senator Class, sorry.
First, I move to accept the proposed amendments from Finance Committee. Or I propose.
There's been a motion to propose the amendments that were sent by the Finance Committee, and there's been a second. We move into discussion. Senator Class.
Oh, these are just, they got us like specific totals from yesterday, so I call the question.
There's been a call to question on the amendment, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. And there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendments by the way of unanimous consent? The amendment stands approved. Senator Class, you still have the floor.
If you, can you update the, like, can we take a friendly from myself to update the enacted total? Thank you. If you just want to talk about why you're looking for funding.
Yeah, so the Hockey Pep Band is a non-audition-based music group, and we allow students who both have auditioned for the marching band who didn't make it and who would still like to continue playing that style of music, but can't because they didn't make the band, or they're in the band and they still want to play more, or they just didn't have time for the band, or whatever the reason may be. And we play at the hockey games, hence the name hockey. And the hockey team and the coach and the cheer team and a lot of the fans there have told us that we really bring a lot to the atmosphere. But that's really hard to do when you don't have a working drum set, which we barely have. And it's also very hard to do when you don't have music books or stands, which is why we're requesting funding for music book stands and a drum set.
To give context, they came to annual allocation? They came last year. Let's just go with that. And we funded the drum set. However, they did not have a chance to purchase the drum set last year. So that money was given to them, didn't use it, so taken back out. So we're just kind of giving it back to them so they can buy the drum set now. And I yield.
Senator Zastro.
Finance Committee sent us no bias. That was only because we did not have the specific line items. It just said we're buying one music book and it's $500. So that's obviously been changed. I can't speak for Finance Committee as a whole, but I'm pretty sure we would send it favorably now. I'll yield.
Senator Stanley.
May I address the speaker?
Yes, you may.
Good evening. Why isn't the music department funding this?
We are not affiliated with the music department. That's partly because if we were, we would lose pretty much all of our power, and that would go to Dr. Galimo and Christian Carigner as the directors of the bands. And if we did that, we more than likely would have to become an audition-based group, and that would pretty much undo everything about the band.
So your band is entirely student-run?
100%.
Is there a hockey pep band that is run by the music department?
No, there's not. We are the only one.
Okay. With that, I'll yield.
Senator Class.
So we go off of the student organization base, SAC, whatever that is, Student Activity Center database for membership. So we were just kind of wondering why there were 50 music stands when the SAC website says you have 34 members, if you could speak to that.
I have not updated the database. I believe that would be either Parker Plashek or Jake Schmieder's responsibility as president or vice president. We are also exploding in our membership, and we don't want to keep having to come back and asking for more money as opposed to just getting them all at once. And as much as we try to keep them in pristine condition, I mean, we are moving them around, they're being used, they just fall over in the middle of a hockey game. There's some level of abuse just because we're using them, and sometimes they get damaged accidentally.
Cool. Yeah, if you just want to update the website, I'd
Yes.
relay that to whoever does that, and I yield.
Senator Hanyang.
May I just speaker?
Yes, you may.
Similar to what a comment that you made about your membership is growing really rapidly. Do you have any plans to make the ensemble auditioned in the future, especially if membership continues to grow?
At the moment, we do not, because we just feel that it's really important. So we feel it's really important for it to not be audition-based, because as I mentioned before, there are a lot of students coming in from high school who have played in a marching band or a pep band, and they just don't have time to be in the marching band. I'm a member of the band, and I mean, we rehearse an hour and a half a day, every day. Game days are on the short end, 10 hours long. It's a lot of time, and a lot of students don't have time for that. And it's also a very high-level ensemble. And a lot of students aren't good enough, or they don't think they're good enough, they don't audition, or they do audition and they get cut. And we feel that if we did make the club audition-based, it would really change a lot. And we don't sound bad being non-audition-based, because we only get really motivated people. So we do not want to make it audition-based at any point.
Okay, I'll yield then.
There's been a call to question on the bill as a whole, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Bender. Blair.
Yes.
Khan. Crab. Colbertson. Dollinger. Green. Hanyang. Johnson. Class. Klein. Klein. Ludwig. Mitchell. Origer. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Samanu. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonet. Zastro. 25. With a vote of 25 to 0 to 0, this funding request passes. Moving on to 2019-2-37F, funding Be the Match on campus with Sir in class.
I propose the amendments from the Finance Committee.
There's been a motion to propose the amendments
Do you have that?
by the Finance Committee. Is there a second? And there's been a second. We move into discussion, Sir in class.
Yeah, so we just amended it to fit P and C. Therefore, I call the question.
There's been a call to question on the amendment, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. And there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendment by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Class.
Do you just want to talk about why you're looking for funding?
Okay, so we're requesting funding for Be the Match on Campus, which is basically a student organization that tries to get more people on the bone stem cell registry. So a lot of times when people have blood or bone diseases, their only chance of survival is a complete transplant of their blood stem cell or bone marrow. So we just want to get more activity around campus. We want to get more people involved, because the more people we get involved, the more lives we can save. And that's what we're requesting funding for, is basically to spread the word about our organization, to get more people involved in our events and meetings and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I yield.
Senator Rinchi.
Thanks for coming in. I love the mission. This is kind of a question to the other senators. Because these are materials for a fundraiser, are we able to purchase or allocate funds for it?
Is that a question to a particular senator?
Anyone.
You have to direct it to someone. Senator Class.
Awesome. So we can, in PNC, I will pull it up so I can be precise. We can, under printing, sorry, I gotta find it really fast. Should I use Control F? It's fine. It's going poorly. Yes, okay, so printing requests can be for groups. They're eligible for $60 per fiscal year in printing expenses. So these are just, they're printing flyers to advertise their organization and events. The donuts were the fundraising, and as you can see, we zero funded that because 1, we can't buy food, and 2, we can't buy fundraising things.
Cool.
So, yeah.
President River.
Don't let this affect your voting outcome, but you should sign up for Be the Match. It's great. Takes like 5 minutes, super easy. Called your man on me too, but you should do it.
I can give you the text code.
Further questions, motions? There's been a call to question on the funding bill, and is there a second? There's been a second. Are there any objections to calling the question on the bill as a whole? Seeing none, we move into a roll call vote. Blair.
Yes.
Bender. Khan. Crab. Colbertson. Dollinger. Green. Hanyang. Heasley. Johnson. Class. Klein. Klein. Ludwig. Mitchell. Orger. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Samanu. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonette. Zastro. 25. You sure? With a vote of 25 to 0 to 0, this funding request passes. You look confused. I was like, sure. Moving on to general orders. Within general orders, we have 2019-2-35Y, fixing mentorship assignments with Vice Speaker Schrader.
Yes, so the current bylaws have the outgoing vice speaker picks mentor-mentee assignments. Don't know how we missed that when Senator Tupper and I rewrote Chapter 5 last year. My bad. So Senator Mass wrote the bill to take that part out and to make it the new vice speaker's responsibility, since that makes more sense, since then they can pair based off of like interest areas instead of just randomly pairing things. So I'm going to call to question.
There's been a call to question on the bill as a whole, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Blair.
Yes.
Bender. Khan. Crab. Colbertson. Dollinger. Green. Hanyang. Johnson. Class. Klein. Klein. Ludwig. Mitchell. Orger. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Schrader. Samanu. Searles. Stanley. Zastro. Tonette. Samuel. Stanley. With a vote of 25 to 0 to 0, this bylaw change passes. Moving on to 2019-2-36Y, merging sustainability and green initiatives funds committees with Senator Ludwig.
Yeah, so this bill is just all about, obviously it's in the title, merging those two committees. They have kind of traditionally served a lot of the same purposes, and so basically we'll be combining them. I don't know if Director Wild is here. Would you like to speak a little bit about why you wanted this change?
Yeah, so right now I lead two committees, and the Green Initiatives Fund Committee is kind of a subcommittee of Sustainability Committee, and it's a little unnecessary. A lot of the roles are repeated, and so it really makes sense to streamline the process and then just make it all one committee. So I can also answer any questions on that.
Finance Director Mueller.
Yeah, so just for context, the Green Initiatives Fund was actually created before the Sustainability Committee. So that was in the bylaws, and then Sustainability Committee became a thing. So I think that's why they're separate. It doesn't really make sense. I believe that everybody on the Green Initiatives Fund Committee is also on sustainability. So it just, to me, makes sense that they would be together as well. So, yes.
Finance Director, do you yield?
I'll yield.
Further questions, motions? There's been a call to question.
Jack.
Do you withdraw? Senator Rowling. Further, Vice Speaker Schrader.
All right, sorry, Senator Tonette, I messed up. You have amendments, you just want to propose them now, and I'll put them on the screen. All right. You still have to propose them.
Senator.
I move to amend the bill to include the amendments that I sent to Senator Schrader.
I'm going to wait for the amendments to pop up on the bill so that everyone can take a look, digest it, and then we'll move into discussion. Yeah, when we can play. Love the silence in the room. Yeah. I hope everyone had a beautiful day today.
Point of information while we wait.
Yes, Senator Searles.
Does it matter that the Green Initiatives Committee is the actual name and it's not the Green Initiatives Fund Committee?
That's a good point. It's a good point to bring it up.
I would
Senators,
propose a friendly to take out fund. Where it
there's
says
already a motion in place.
once
for an
it's
amendment.
done, then I will do that.
And once that's done,
Senator, you're speaking out of privilege.
I yield.
Thank you. There's been a motion to propose the following amendments on the bill as a whole. If anyone, and there's been a second, we move into discussion. Senator Toinette.
Okay, so yeah, that was way more of a process than it needed to be. Sorry about that. So really what this was this didn't cover every instance where it said Green Initiatives Fund or removed some areas that other parts of this bill kind of covered. So the first two enacted there, the way it was amended, it wouldn't have made sense. So I just added Sustainability Committee to the beginning of the sentence. Then the third enacted, 7.10.4 is all the members that can be in like the Green Initiatives Fund, and that was covered by the enacted before that. So that's why I tried to cancel out that bylaw. And then the last enacted, that was another part where it just said Green Initiatives Fund, and we didn't cover that in this bylaw. So just trying to make this as smooth a process as possible.
There's been a call to question on the amendment, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. And there's been a call for unanimous consent on the amendment. Are there any objections in approving the amendments by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Toinette, you still have the floor.
Call to question on the bill?
Do you withdraw?
I do.
Do you yield? Senator Searles.
I'd like to propose a friendly to change all the lines that say Green Initiatives Fund Committee to Green Initiatives Committee.
It's
I
Senator Ludwig.
accept the friendly.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Searles. Just replace all. Further questions, motions? There's been a call to question, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Bender. Blair.
Yes.
Khan. Crab. Culbertson. Dollinger. Zastro. Toinette. Samuel. Stanley. Searles. Strader. Samanu. Rolling. Rinchi. Rice. Orger. Mitchell. Ludwig. Klein. Klein. Class. Johnson. Hanyang. Green. 25. With a vote of 25 to 0, this bylaw change bill passes. Moving on to 2019-2-37Y Treasurer Reform Act, TRA, with Senator Ludwig.
Nothing I love more than initialisms. Yeah, so basically this solves a lot of the problems that we had discovered a couple weeks ago, that there was a treasurer section in the bylaws that we didn't know about because someone removed it without passing a Senate bill saying they could. So yeah, it solves some of those problems, rewords a couple things it also creates an asset board, which is just kind of a little committee that will be under the treasurer to deal with asset. So it's just kind of allowing for some organization there. And then towards the end, you will notice some changes in Chapter 11. Only one of those changes is really substantial. The first, it's just changing who proposes the asset recommendations in 11.7.13.3 from the finance director to the treasurer, because the treasurer is the one who actually deals with asset. So that's just kind of a little clarification. And then that big section right there on the second page is just renumbering some things that were just incorrectly numbered. And yeah, that's basically everything the bill does. So if anybody has any questions? Senator Klass?
The treasurer already has volunteers for the asset, right? So this is just making them into a committee to organize them?
Yeah, it's just providing some organization. So.
It's your speaking privilege, Senator.
Senator Zastrow?
I would request my own speaking privilege.
I will yield then.
Senator Zastrow.
Yeah, so this is germane, but when you call names out of order, I believe it confuses the Kleins. Am I correct in that? We'll adapt. Okay, cool. I yield.
Senator Hunt, there's been a call to question on the bill as a whole, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Senator Mass, you're not in quorum. Yeah, can't do that while you're voting. You have to withdraw. You can't object to your own motion.
I withdraw.
Awesome. Back into motion for the discussions. Thank you. There's been a quorum call. Advet, Olicard, Bender, Blair, it's a quorum call. Khan, Crabb, Colbertson, Dollinger, Fritz, Green, Gonzalez, Hanyang, Heasley, Johnson, Klass, Klein, Lipford, Ludwig, Mass, Meredith, Mitchell, Orger, Rice, Rinchi, Rolling, Samanu, Schrader, Searles, Stanley, Samuel, Tonette, Zastrow. We do have quorum. Moving on, back to the bill. There's been a call to question on the bill as a whole, and there's been a second. Are there any objections to calling the question? Seeing none, we'll be doing a roll call vote. Bender. Blair. Khan. Crabb. Colbertson. Dollinger. Zastrow. Tonette. Samuel. Stanley. Searles. Schrader. Samanu. Rolling. Rinchi. Rice. Orger. Mitchell. Mass. Ludwig. Senator Klein, Nicholas. Senator Klein, Alex. Klass. Johnson. Hanyang. Green. 26. With a vote of 26-0, this bylaw bill passes. Moving on to 2019-2-38Y, updating constituency councils with Senator Mass.
Yes, so this bill we've already seen last week. It should be a pretty straightforward change. It changes the councils for the business council, as they're now the Ivy Student Council. And it changes the Vet Med Constituency Council to the Graduate and Professional Student Senate. With that, I will yield.
Vice Speaker Schrader.
So the business one is more straightforward. The vet med one is really interesting because there's not really an organization in the College of Veterinary Medicine that works as a constituency council. What was listed as a constituency council really does not want to be. They would lose their funding from their national organization if they were. And there was discussions of creating maybe a dean's council and maybe a club president council, but I mean, it just doesn't really seem that feasible. So since a constituency council has to facilitate information from students to their college, GPSS has College of Vet Med representatives on it. So having the Vet Med senator report to GPSS does accomplish that goal. And at least in the short term, it's the best option we have. We have talked to members of GPSS, and they are on board, willing. They're going to have to take a little look at what the permanent situation looks like. The Vet Med senator would still be individually elected in the spring. They would still kind of have, even though they're reporting the same constituency as GPSS, they are kind of separate. So essentially GPSS will pick up kind of an extra senator, so they'll have a 3+1 arrangement or whatever we do the apportionment. That's on first read today. So if you have any questions, Speaker Colvison and I can answer those. And I will ask President Graber, what's up?
So this also addresses a problem we've had within student government in general in the vet med senators not being present or not being involved, and that's because of the fundamental issue of not having a constituency council. And so Senator Alucard's done an amazing job this year in addressing that issue. And we actually found out because I met with Senator Alucard and the dean of vet med, and I was like, so what's your relationship like with your collegiate council? And she says, we don't have one. And so I think that really helped address this problem, and I'm really proud of Vice Speaker Schrader's work on this in moving forward. So I yield.
Great, I yield too.
There's been a call to question on the bill as a whole, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a roll call vote. Bender. Blair.
Yes.
Khan. Crabb. Culbertson. Dollinger. Green. Hanyang. Johnson. Class. Klein. Klein. Ludwig. Mass. Mitchell. Orger. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Samanu. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Tonette. Zastro. 26. With a vote of 26 to 0, this bylaw change bill passes. Moving on to 2019-2-39SZ with fixing UROC Campus Town Constituency Council, or constituency confusion, with Senator Mass.
Yeah, this bill is a constitutional amendment bill. Basically, 2-3 elections ago, there was a constitutional amendment to remove Campus Town. Campus Town used to be its own constituency council separate from UROC. And at that time, the constituency council ceased to keep meeting, so we removed them from the Constitution and just merged them into UROC at that time. However, as a result of that amendment, there's another line that now becomes confusing as to what its actual meaning is. And that line says only those living in the City of Ames University impact area are considered a part of their respective constituency council. So without Campus Town, which is what the City of Ames University impacted area is existing, it's very unclear as to, is that referring to UROC is the constituency council, and therefore only people living in Campus Town are members of UROC? Well, that can't be the case. Okay, what is it referring to then? So to just clear it up, we're taking out the section that says only those living in the City of Ames University impact area are part of their own respective constituency council. Practically, this shouldn't change anything with how StuGov or elections operate. It should just clear up constitutional confusion.
To you. Sir in class.
This is a question to Senator Mass. What does the first order clause do? Like, what did it originally say? Because, like, this is about UROC, but then we're talking about sororities and fraternities, so I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so the entirety of the sentence says only those living in interfraternity housing, collegiate pan-Hellenic housing, or in the University of Ames, or City of Ames, wow. The City of Ames university impacted areas shall be considered part of their respective residence areas. So it shouldn't touch the other two.
Do you yield?
I yield.
Senator Stanley.
Sorry. I'll propose the Rules Committee amendments. I move to amend the final ordered clause to read at the next general election.
There's been a motion to amend the last ordered clause to the proposed amendment, and there's been a second. We move into discussion. Senator Stanley. There's been a call to question on the amendment as a whole, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote, and there's been a call for unanimous consent. Are there any objections in approving the amendments by the way of unanimous consent? Seeing none, the amendment stands approved. Senator Stanley, you still have the floor.
Seeing no other placards up, I'll call to question.
There's been a call to question on the bill as a whole, and there's been a second. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we'll move into a placard vote. Roll call vote. My apologies.
Point of
Bender.
order. I believe it would be appropriate to call for unanimous consent, as this is not actually a bylaw bill. There is no rule preventing constitutional amendments from passing by unanimous consent.
There's been a division of roll call. Oh my God. I'll prefer to do a roll call vote. If anyone has objection, they can object to the decision of the chair. Bender. Blair.
Yes.
Khan. Crab. Colbertson. Dowlinger. Green. Hanyang. Johnson. Class. Klein. Klein. Ludwig. Mass. Mitchell. Orger. Rice. Rinchi. Rolling. Samanu. Schrader. Searles. Stanley. Samuel. Samuel. Toinette. Zastro. With a vote of 26-0, this constitutional change passes. Moving on to new business. Within new business, we have 2019-2-38F, funding Iowa State blood drive with Senator Class.
Me. Hi. Title. We'll see this in Finance Committee next week.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. 2019-2-39F, Swim Club DEP contract with Senator Class.
Title. Yeah, I don't know the status of this, but I'm assuming we'll see it in Finance Committee next week. What?
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. 2019-2-40F, funding Because I Said I Would with Senator Zastro. Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-41E, approving the 2020 election apportionments with Senator Ludwig.
Title. Cool. Yeah, so what it says in the title will just be approving the apportionments that each constituency council will get in the next election. So, yeah, we'll see you next week.
Questions of intent? Vice Speaker Schrader.
Is your intent to double check that Freddie is losing a seat?
I can.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Senator Zastro.
Yes.
Senator Mass.
Is it your intent to ask the election commission if they really intend 36 seats when the Constitution requires 34?
No.
Questions of intent? Yes.
To explain that, there's actually rules in our Constitution that will result in there being more than 34 seats. So that's like the minimum, and there's other rules that can kind of tax them on. So that's why there are more than 34. That's actually why we learned that we had more than 34 seats this year. So.
Further questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-42Y. Constitutional Amendments are Hard Act. CAAH Act. With Senator Ludwig.
Title. Okay, cool. Yeah, so pretty simple bill, just dealing with the other position that we found, the secretary position. It's just basically allowing it to stay in the bylaws in a way under the chief of staff, but not really creating any burden for them. So it's just recognizing the fact that this is a position mandated by the Constitution, and so we kind of have to have it. So yeah, we'll see you next week.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-43 SO, ordering a State of the Student Body address with Senator Ludwig.
Title? It's fun. Yeah, so our Constitution also requires that President Graber give us an address every Senate once a session, and so he actually already missed the first one, so we'll let that pass. But we're setting one up for this session in late November. So yeah.
Questions of intent? Senator Stanley.
Is it your intent to have this bill be personalized to literally just this term?
Yes or no?
Yes.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-44Y, very outstanding and terrific Election Reform Act, Water Act. With Senator Ludwig.
Title. I hope you guys all appreciate the way I'm naming this bill. It's simply outlining the power that we are granted in the Constitution to call for a special election. We don't really need to, but I figured it was good to have some ground rules for how we do it. So that's basically most of what it does, and it leads into the next bill that will be on the dock that we'll go to. So, yeah, we'll see you next week.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-45 SO, calling for a special election with Senator Ludwig.
Title. So this bill is exercising the power that the previous bill is outlining. We wouldn't really need that bylaw bill, but this is just kind of doing the thing that we want to do. And so this specific special election will be for the court reform amendments that we will be seeing a bill for probably next week or the week after. So yeah, we'll talk more about it next week.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Moving on to 2019-2-41F, funding Dance Marathon with Senator Class.
Title. This is not we'll probably see this in Finance Committee next week, so cool. Bye.
Questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll see this one next week. Closing announcements. Senator Rowling.
So if you're passionate about women being represented on campus, I'm looking for some help with the Women in STEM initiative. Especially, I would like some younger voices to help carry on the project in the future. So if you're interested, please contact me. We're also looking forward to selecting a new speaker for this year. So I'm excited to share that we've decided to move forward on a speaker who is an expert in social robotics and human-robot interactions. So that sounds really cool. So if you're interested to learn more, please reach out to me. I yield.
Senator Khan.
Hello. Tomorrow, there will be an open forum with myself and the other engineering senators. 5:30, Marston. There will be free pizza, maybe some barbecue chicken pizza if you have bad taste. But I encourage you all to come and ask fun questions.
Senator Klein.
So tomorrow, there is an IRHA meeting happening here in this room at 7:30. I would like to ask that anyone who wants to come and advocate for student safety in their residence hall is encouraged to attend. I encourage everyone here who cared about our open forum tonight to come tomorrow and to help advocate for the safety and well-being of students. The issue that was brought to the attention occurred in a residency hall, and if many of us come and demonstrate that we stand in solidarity with those who are faced with discrimination or hate speech based on their identities, will certainly bring a very firm message to IRHA and to the DOR. Those who said that they want to make a change, again, I really encourage you to come. This is a great opportunity to prove that you mean what you said. Again, the meeting is in this room at 7:30 tomorrow. Thank you.
Senator Zastro.
I would just like to echo what Senator Klein said and also add Pete Englund, the director of the Department of Residence, is going to be there, as well as the IRHA's advisor, and Mohammed from dining. I don't think that's applicable, though. And then this is a really new body, IRHA, or at least they're new people in the body. It's not new itself. But these are people who probably don't understand the voice that they have as the representatives of people living in residence halls. So if you give them a strong opinion, I think that they will take their jobs more seriously, and I think that they will understand the gravity of the situation. I yield.
Senator Han Young.
First of all, question for Senator Zastrow or Senator Klein. Do you have to be a member of that constituency to attend?
No, there's an open forum.
Okay, awesome. Secondly, kind of on that same topic, Senator Bender mentioned MLOs during our open forum. In addition to MLOs within your college, there is also oftentimes multicultural councils as part of your constituency, so I suggest you check that out. I've really learned a lot about some of these racial issues through my attendance at Multicultural Business Network, which has been really eye-opening. So check that out. In addition, the ISU choir has a 20-year reunion for our current choir director on Saturday, and on Sunday there is a event called the Bells of Iowa State Anniversary Gala Concert. This is because our good old Carillon in Central Campus is celebrating its 120th anniversary. And our Carilliner, the person who goes up the stairs every single Friday and plays the great tunes, Tinchi Tom, she is celebrating her 25th anniversary here at Iowa State. In addition, it's also the 50th anniversary of Seasons Auditorium, so it's just kind of a perfect storm of all of those things. If you want to check out a mini Campanile Carillon model and hear some good music from past musicians, it's going to be on Sunday, $10. That's all I have. You.
Senator Ludwig.
As promised, I'm going to update y'all on some lectures events that are coming up in the following week. On Monday, October 28th at 7 in the Sunroom, there's Environmental Martyrs and the Fate of the Forest with Rob Nixon. On Tuesday, October 29th at 7:30 in the Sunroom again, there is in Our Backyards, How the Prison Boom Transformed Rural America with John Major Eason. And on Wednesday, October 30th, at 5:30 p.m. in the Sunroom, City Council Ward for Canada Forum that Tony was talking about earlier. And then on, well, I guess we probably couldn't make this next one because it starts at 7 next Wednesday. But yeah, if any of those sound interesting to you, y'all can go to the lectures website, and there'll be more information on those lectures, when they are, where they are, what they're about, and who's giving them. And so yeah, no, they're great events. Again, you're all paying for them, so you should at least go to a couple. So yeah, thanks.
Senator Stanley. I called you first.
All right, so I have a couple things to say. So I'll start on a more philosophical note. What does justice mean to all of you? To me, I think the idea of justice as it stands right now is one of the biggest scams that the American people have fallen to. justice really depends on every individual's moral code and what they think is and is not correct. I think the only thing that matters is the truth. And there is always one single, incontrovertible, unshakable truth to a situation. And that truth can be painful, but averting your eyes from it results in an even greater tragedy than the one that you may seek to prevent. At the same time, I think it's important to recognize that that truth, that one objective truth, is very difficult to find, and in some cases almost impossible. In my career on the Student Conduct Hearing Board, for example, out of maybe 10 or 20 cases that I found, only one of those cases were the facts of the case clear and our decision clear from the get-go. And all of the other ones, there was a lot of confusion about what happened, what exactly occurred, the timeline. So when you're searching for that truth, it's important to do your due diligence and to do as much research and as much work as possible to determine what those objective facts are. But as soon as you've determined that, it's important that you take a stand and that you take action on that information that you have, as opposed to just standing by and making a statement, say. And now, for something a little lighter. Do you love Ames? I Love Ames is having a meeting next Monday, 6 to 7, West Sauce. Hope to see you there. We'd certainly love some new faces around this table, like I mentioned last week. We need people who can potentially keep it going after we're gone. Hopefully that will not come too soon, but hope to see some of you there on Monday at 6. I yield.
Senator Dallinger.
Hi, everyone. UROC is having their fundraiser at Blaze tomorrow from 5 to 9 p.m. I will be posting the flyer on the Facebook page. Feel free to share it. Yeah, so make sure you present the flyer when you go, because I know all of you are going to go because you love UROC and you love supporting us. So, thanks. See you there. I yield. I don't know. That's not.
Senator Inge.
Thinking of fundraisers, the Minorities in Agricultural, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences is going to be having their fundraiser here. They're going to be working with Panda, so if you guys are thinking about getting Panda tomorrow, make sure to stop outside, grab a flyer from them, and help support the minorities group in ag. Thank you.
Vice Speaker Schrader.
Yeah, I think that we did a pretty good job tonight of being passionate and respectful and poised. And I think if we carry that message on, there's no way it isn't heard. And when we lose that poise and respect is when we're gonna run into trouble. And I was really, really proud of every single person in this room that talked through difficult conversations about how passionate but to the point and to the accurate point they were. And I think that's a really good job, and I think we ought to keep that as we go forward into these conversations and into the action phase, which would be the harder phase than admitting that there is a problem, which there is. Yeah, I think that is good. I would just really like senators to, if you have passion areas, let us know, let Speaker Culberson and I know. We're getting kind of close to the end of when you're going to be able to start large projects and get them done by the end of your term, and we really want to help you figure that out. And yeah, so we love to brainstorm with you, brainstorm with the other senators, use that office time, use your office hour to collaborate and use that space. Please, if you're a mentor, email me when you do your meetings. And with that, I'll pass on the mic.
Madam Speaker.
Okay, to go off of that, yeah, please talk to us. I swear sometimes my brain feels like it's overflowing with things that people tell me that they're doing. So, like, come tell me things that you're doing, because I really want to, like, connect you with other people that are doing similar things or things that I might think you might be interested in. Because although we are getting close to the end, too, that doesn't mean that you can't start something, you know? You might start something this year and need to continue it next year. You might need to start something, pass it on to someone. A lot of those things are, like, really great ways to kind of learn different leadership skills, too. So that's all great. I wanted to say thank you so much to everyone that came to all the homecoming stuff this last weekend. It was super fun. We had a great time at Raymond Gardens. That was fun. But there were a lot of pumpkins, and some of them were like amazing and beyond any artistic talent I could ever wish to have. So that was super cool. If you didn't check it out this year, you should next year. It was awesome. If you're interested in the, I'm going to call it the Student Office Space Beautification Task Force, let me know. We'll be beginning work on those soon. Those are important because not only are we going to improve our space, which is going to be way more welcoming to students and just not look like we live in a garage where we store our junk, but also we're going to be kind of creating spaces for other students too. I think about like the office and like the countless hours I've spent there and like sometimes that you all spend there, and we can create that exact same kind of space, that exact same area and kind of like home for other organizations. So come meet with me, tell me you're interested in all that kind of stuff because we're going to start that really soon and get that rolling. So go Cyclones. Move to adjourn.
Adjourn.